Dealing with poor people is such a waste of time. I'll only bother with you if I have time left over, Michael said, laughing and waving us away like we didn't matter. Even I, who usually tries to be kind to others, had reached my breaking point. Then, my son, who had been listening to the conversation, said loudly enough for Michael to hear, "I wonder if I withdraw the 1 billion yen I have deposited, will that shut this place down?" Hi, I'm Susan Parker, a 67-year-old housewife. Lately, my husband George and I have been enjoying relaxing afternoons at cafes. George is 2 years younger than me and has recently retired. Since I've been so focused on work for most of my life, I now find myself unsure of how to spend my free time, so I decided to take my husband out to explore different shops and cafes. We both love coffee, and we've always wanted to visit various cafes. George didn't mind my idea of going on a cafe tour and, in fact, became more and more interested in it. One day, while watching a TV show about cafes, George said, "Hey, let's try this one next time." Soon, he even started making coffee at home, and the whole house was filled with the wonderful smell of freshly brewed coffee. "Wow, Dad's coffee is really good," our son James said during a visit. "See, I told you, it's all about the beans," George replied with a smile. James, who is now 38 and has been living independently for a long time, comes home occasionally to visit and share interesting stories from work. "Are you and Dad doing okay? Any changes?" James asked. "We're the same as always," I replied. "That's good, but you two are getting older, so take care of yourselves," James said with concern. "Don't worry about us," I reassured him. "Even at retirement age, we're still going strong." James chuckled. "Dad, you really are full of energy." Spending these peaceful, carefree moments with my husband and son makes me incredibly happy. Looking back, George and I rarely ever argued, and I don't think James went through a rebellious phase. George and I first met during our college days. We were in the same department and saw each other in class often. Eventually, George asked me out, and we started dating. Being with him always made me feel calm and happy. Even after we started working, we stayed together, and a few years later, we got married. Our married life was full of happiness. For the first few years after we got married, we worried we might not be able to have children, but then, our son was born. He was so adorable, like a little angel. I still remember how happy my husband was when he held our baby for the first time. Since then, the three of us lived a happy life together. Our son grew up to be kind and good-hearted. Even though my husband and I both worked and might have left him feeling lonely sometimes, he didn't seem to go through any real troubles during his teenage years. "Mom, Dad, there's something I want to do, and I need your support," he once said. Our son knew what he wanted in life early on and followed that path with determination. We supported him completely and were so proud to see him achieve his goals. Even after becoming an adult, he always showed us love and care, taking us on trips and to nice restaurants. As we got older, my husband and I would sometimes get emotional, crying and thanking him, only for him to laugh at how dramatic we were. Later, our son married a wonderful woman, and my husband and I were overjoyed. I have a supportive wife who helps me in my busy work life, so I want to work hard to protect our family, he once told us. Our daughter-in-law has a lovely smile and a gentle nature, perfect for our hardworking son. The couple continued to visit us regularly, and we always enjoyed spending time with them. However, recently, my husband started having health problems. As our son had warned, we needed to take care of ourselves, so we went to the hospital together. There, the doctor gave us devastating news. "It's terminal cancer. You have about a year left to live." My husband and I were both stunned. We had planned to spend our retirement years together, and we even talked about opening a small cafe at our own pace. The news left us heartbroken. "I can't believe it. Dad has cancer," our son said, equally shocked. "We don't have kids yet, and I was just thinking about showing you your grandchild soon." It was a tough situation for all of us, but my husband was the one facing the hardest part. He was hospitalized and started cancer treatment. "How's the treatment going? Is it painful?" I asked. "I'm fine. Who knows? Maybe I'll beat cancer if I keep going like this, right?" he said, trying to stay strong, but the treatment was clearly tough. His face had become thin, and his body was getting weaker. "Susan, I'm sorry, I might leave you behind and die first," my husband said softly. "What are you talking about? You still have more than half a year left. According to the doctor, you never know, you might live even longer. We just have to stay positive and keep hoping," I replied, trying to reassure him. "Yeah, But I just wanted to apologize in advance. I could pass away at any moment. Don't say that, I said, noticing how weak he seemed, not just physically, but mentally too. Our son, seeing his dad's low spirits, wanted to do something special for him. I want to grant Dad's wish before he becomes too weak to go out. Yeah, let's ask him, I said, encouraged by our son. So, I gently asked my husband, if you could go out right now, where would you like to go? We might not be able to stay overnight, but maybe we could go for a short trip. Oh, I know, he said, there's a hot spring a few hours away by car. A hot spring? I asked. Yeah, and there's a cafe nearby that serves delicious coffee. I couldn't help but smile. My husband always loved coffee and cafes. Let's go to the hot spring and have some of that delicious coffee. Hearing that, my husband looked genuinely happy. I hope the doctor will give us permission, he said with a hopeful smile. Later, I spoke to the doctor, and fortunately, he agreed, saying my husband's condition was stable enough for a short outing. So, we went on a family trip, the first one in a long time. It was only a day trip, but it felt wonderful to go out together as a family. Our son drove, and the four of us, my husband, our son, his wife, and I, headed to the hot spring and cafe. The large outdoor bath at the hot spring had a breathtaking view, and the weather was perfect. It was an incredible experience for all of us. At the cafe, we heard the men's bath had an amazing view as well, and the hot spring itself was a wonderful place to relax. We finally had the coffee we'd been looking forward to, and it was so delicious that it touched our hearts. I'm glad we could enjoy this delicious coffee together. Thank you so much. I'll keep doing my best with the treatment, my husband said to us with a gentle smile. Even though we waited and waited, there was no sign of anyone calling us. Before we knew it, 3 hours had passed. People who arrived later than us were being served, and we found it strange. That bank clerk, Michael, was helping other customers like he had completely forgotten about us. I felt I had to say something, so as soon as Michael finished with a customer, I quickly went over to him. Excuse me, we've been waiting for a long time. When can we have the meeting about the loan? I asked. Michael looked at me with annoyance. Are you still here? Huh? What do you mean? I was confused. There's no way we're giving a loan to someone like you to open a cafe or any shop. You're too old, he said bluntly. You're not even wearing brand name clothes, and you don't look rich at all. It's a waste of time dealing with poor people like you. I'll help you if I have any time left over. With that, he laughed and shooed us away like we didn't matter. I was shocked. Normally, I'm a kind person, but this was too much. I was furious. Just then, my son returned from the restroom, and I told him everything Michael had said. After hearing the story, my son raised his voice, making sure Michael could hear. If I withdraw the 1 billion yen I deposited here, I wonder if I could shut this place down. Michael looked puzzled. What? He muttered. Sir, if you're going to cause a disturbance, please leave. You're bothering other customers, Michael said, completely missing the point. I couldn't believe Michael had the nerve to say that to my son, but my son remained calm. I recently moved my business deposit to this bank, but I guess that was a mistake. Call the branch manager because I can't talk to you, my son demanded. Stop it, or I'll sue you for obstructing business, Michael snapped, refusing to help. Even my son had reached his limit of patience. Fine, I'll make a call myself, he said, pulling out his phone. A few moments later, the branch manager came running out of the back room, clearly in a panic. Mr. Johnson, what happened? The manager asked, looking worried as he addressed my son. Michael's eyes widened in surprise when he realized what was happening. Branch manager, what's going on with this bank? This is Michael Clark. He made my mother wait over 3 hours, called her a poor person, and tried to send her away, my son said firmly. What, Michael, what the hell are you doing? The branch manager asked, clearly upset. Mr. Johnson, could you please come to the reception room? I want to apologize, Michael stammered. We decided to follow the branch manager to avoid disturbing the other customers further. Once we reached the reception room, the branch manager bowed deeply and apologized. I'm truly sorry about this. Michael just transferred from another bank, and we didn't have a close relationship with you yet. Our other staff members were too busy to notice, he explained. It's fine, manager. I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want you to address how he treated my mother and judged her based on her appearance, I replied. Of course, the branch manager said. Michael, Hurry up and apologize. This person is the owner and chef of a famous restaurant. They just opened a new store in this area and deposited 1 billion yen in our branch, the manager added. Huh? Michael said, turning pale as he realized who we were. He quickly bowed and apologized. I'm so sorry. Michael, have you always treated customers differently based on your own judgments? If so, you're not fit to be a bank employee or even work in customer service, I said firmly. At the very least, we don't want to do any business here anymore. No, please reconsider, Mr. Johnson, the branch manager pleaded. Unfortunately, we can't trust this bank as it is. Show your sincerity, and then we can talk. If you can't do that, I'll withdraw all my deposits by the end of this month, my son said, and we left the bank. A week later, the branch manager called my son. He explained that the bank had conducted a detailed investigation into Michael and found that he had been turning away customers for loans based on his own judgments. They also discovered that he had embezzled the bank's money. Unsurprisingly, Michael was fired. The branch manager called my son several times to apologize and offered various favorable terms for my loan. My son felt the manager's sincerity and decided not to withdraw the deposits. Thanks to the manager's proposals, I was able to secure a loan at a very good rate. With everything in place, I was finally able to open my cafe. Initially, I had planned to start a coffee shop.
Hey there, I'm Anita Sanders, a 28-year-old software engineer. Growing up, I was always the afterthought in my family. My older brother Derek, he was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I vividly remember my 10th birthday when my parents forgot to buy me a cake because they were too busy planning Derek's college send-off party. That pretty much sums up my childhood. Anita, honey, can you help set the table? My mom, Martha, would call out. Derek needs to focus on his football practice. I'd grumble but comply, watching as Derek lounged on the couch flipping through channels. That's my girl, Dad would say, not even looking up from his newspaper. As we grew older, the pattern continued. I worked my butt off through college, landed a great job at a tech firm, and started saving every penny. Meanwhile, Derek. Another divorce. I overheard Dad say one day, "Don't worry, we'll figure something out. You know we've always got your back." I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. That was marriage number 3 down the drain. My best friend and co-worker, Lydia, was my saving grace through it all. "Girl, you need to set some boundaries with your family," she'd tell me over our lunch breaks. "They're taking advantage of you." I know, I'd sigh. "But they're family, you know." Little did I know how prophetic Lydia's words would be. Last week, I got the promotion I've been gunning for. Junior Dev Team Lead, baby. I was on cloud 9, already dreaming about the cute little house I'd finally be able to afford. "Let's celebrate." Lydia squealed, hugging me tight. First round's on me. We hit our favorite bar after work, and I may have had one too many martinis. Feeling bold, I decided to check my savings account, ready to see that down payment within reach. "What the?" I muttered, staring at my phone in disbelief. "What's wrong?" Lydia asked, leaning over. I showed her my screen, my hands shaking. It's empty. All of it, gone." "That's impossible," Lydia said, grabbing my phone. "Did you get hacked?" But deep down, I knew this had my family's fingerprints all over it. The golden child had struck again, and somehow I was left holding the bag. As I sit here nursing the mother of all hangovers and a broken heart, I can't help but wonder, how the hell did I let things get this far? And more importantly, what am I going to do about it? I stormed into my parents' house, my blood boiling. Mom and Dad were in the living room, looking way too calm for people who had just robbed their own daughter. "What the hell did you do to my savings account?" I demanded. Mom's face paled. "Anita, sweetie, let's talk about this calmly." "Calmly? You emptied my entire account." Dad stood up, trying to placate me. "Anita, you have to understand, your brother." "Of course it's about Derek. When is it not about Derek?" "He's going through a difficult time," Mom interjected. "Vanessa is threatening to go public with certain information." I laughed bitterly. Let me guess, he cheated on her too. The silence was all the confirmation I needed. "We had to protect the family name," Dad said firmly. "You wouldn't want your brother's mistakes to affect your career, would you?" "My career? Are you kidding me? You stole my money." "We didn't steal anything," Mom snapped. "We're family. We help each other." "Help? You took everything I've saved for years. How did you even access my account?" Dad at least had the decency to look sheepish. Remember when you helped us set up online banking? You gave us your information then. I felt sick. I trusted you. And we're asking you to trust us now, Mom pleaded. Derek needs this. Once he's back on his feet. No, I cut her off. No more. I'm done being Derek's personal piggy bank. I want my money back. Every cent. Now. Be reasonable, Dad started. But I was beyond reasoning. Reasonable? You want reasonable? How about I go to the police and report this theft? Mom gasped. You wouldn't dare. We're your parents. Parents don't steal from their children, I shot back. As we argued, I noticed movement in the hallway. My younger cousin Jake stood there, phone in hand, eyes wide. Was he recording this? Dad noticed too. Jake, this is a private family matter. Go to your room. Jake scurried off, but not before giving me a significant look. I'd have to talk to him later. I want my money back, I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. Anita, please, Mom begged. We'll figure something out. Just give us some time. Time? Like the time I spent working overtime, skipping vacations, pinching every penny. That time. The silence that followed was deafening. I can't believe you did this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm moving out today. Don't be dramatic, Dad scoffed. Dramatic? You haven't seen dramatic yet. I headed for the stairs. I'm packing my things and leaving. And if I don't see that money back in my account soon, the next conversation we have will be through lawyers. I could hear them calling after me, but I didn't care. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, my phone buzzed. It was Lydia. Hey, how'd it go? About as well as you'd expect. Can I crash at your place for a while? Of course. Want me to come help you pack? Please, and Lydia, thanks. As I hung up, I noticed a text from Jake. I got it all on video. Let me know if you need it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally put an end to this family's toxic dynamics. And if Derek and my parents went down in flames, well, they lit the match themselves. Later, I sat at Lydia's kitchen table, surrounded by a mess of papers and laptops. Jake had just left after dropping off a USB drive filled with financial documents he'd swiped from Derek's home office. I can't believe how deep this rabbit hole goes, Lydia muttered, scrolling through spreadsheets. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. Tell me about it. How did I not see any of this before? Because you didn't want to, Lydia said gently. But now we've got the goods on your brother, and it's not pretty. I picked up a bank statement. Look at these withdrawals. They line up perfectly with the deposits into his personal account. He's been embezzling from his own company for years. Jake's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Guys, I just got off the phone with Grandma. She confirmed that Derek's been hitting her up for loans every few months. She thought she was helping him through tough times. More like helping him fund his midlife crisis, I growled. Designer clothes, fancy cars, 5-star hotels. Lydia whistled. And check out these tax returns. Either Derek has the world's worst accountant or he's been cooking the books. As we dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Derek wasn't just financially abusive. He'd left a trail of emotional wreckage through his marriages. I spoke with Vanessa, I said, scrolling through texts. She put me in touch with his other exes. The stories they told. It's like he has a playbook for manipulation. Lydia looked at me, concern etched on her face. Anita, this is big, like potential jail time big. Are you sure you want to go through with exposing all this? I hesitated. Despite everything, Derek was still my brother. And my parents? They'd enabled him, sure, but could I really be the one to bring them all down? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Lydia answered it, and in walked the most gorgeous man I'd ever seen. Carlos Mendoza, he said, extending his hand. I'm the lawyer your cousin Jake recommended. I shook his hand, suddenly very aware that I was in day-old sweats with unwashed hair. Anita Sanders. Thanks for coming. Carlos' eyes swept over the chaos on the table. Looks like you've been busy. Mind filling me in? For the next hour, we laid out everything we discovered. Carlos listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions that made me realize just how serious this all was. So, he said finally, leaning back, what do you want to do with all this? I took a deep breath. I want my money back, but more than that, I want Derek to face consequences for once in his life. I'm just scared of what it'll do to my family. Carlos nodded. It's a tough situation, but remember, you're not the one who created this mess. You're just the one brave enough to clean it up. Something in his words, or maybe just the way he looked at me with those intense brown eyes, made me sit up straighter. You're right, I said. It's time Derek faced the music. Where do we start? As Carlos began outlining our strategy, I felt a mix of dread and excitement. This wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in my life, I was taking control. Oh, Lydia piped up. Don't forget to mention your promotion. We're not letting Derek's drama overshadow that. I smiled gratefully at her. Right. I've got a new job title to live up to. Lead developer won't conquer itself. Carlos grinned. A woman of many talents. I look forward to working with you, Anita. As we dove back into the documents, I couldn't help but feel a spark of something new. Maybe, just maybe, out of all this chaos, something good could grow. But first, it was time to tear down the house of lies my brother had built. I took a deep breath, my finger hovering over the send button. This email would set everything in motion. No going back now. You sure about this? Lydia asked, squeezing my shoulder. I nodded, clicking send. It's time. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Derek's company received an anonymous tip about his embezzlement. The IRS got a detailed report of his tax fraud. And thanks to Carlos' connections, Derek's exes found a sympathetic journalist to share their stories. The house of cards came tumbling down fast. I was in a meeting when my phone exploded with notifications. Derek Sanders, CFO of Technova, arrested on multiple charges. I excused myself, hands shaking as I called Carlos. It's happening, he said. You ready for the next step? I steeled myself. Let's do it. We met my parents at their lawyer's office. They looked shell-shocked. How could you do this to your own brother? Mom hissed. I slid Jake's recording across the table. How could you steal from your own daughter? Their faces paled as they listened to their own voices admitting to the theft. You have two choices, Carlos said coolly. Repay Anita in full or face charges yourselves. Dad's shoulders slumped in defeat. We'll pay. The fallout was brutal. Derek was fired and faced years in prison. My parents became social pariahs when the story broke. But the hardest hit came from an unexpected source. Anita, dear, my grandmother said over the phone. I've revised my will. I hope you don't mind, but I've left everything to you. Grandma, you don't have to. I do, she interrupted firmly. It's time this family had some honest leadership. Months passed. With my recovered savings and a hefty promotion, turns out exposing corporate fraud looks good on a resume. I bought my dream home, a cute Victorian with a wraparound porch. To new beginnings, Carlos toasted, clinking his champagne glass against mine as we stood in my new living room. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Speaking of new beginnings, the support group launches next week. Will you be there? Wouldn't miss it, he said, his eyes twinkling. The support group for victims of familial financial abuse was my way of turning pain into purpose. If I could help even one person avoid what I went through, it would be worth it. Tonight was the company's annual gala. I smoothed down my dress, nervousness and excitement battling in my stomach. You look amazing, Lydia gushed as we entered the ballroom. Jake whistled in agreement. I spotted Carlos by the bar, looking dashing in a tux. He handed me a glass of champagne just as our CEO clinked for attention. I'd like to recognize Anita Sanders, he announced, not only for her exceptional work as lead developer, but for her courage in exposing corporate fraud and her dedication to helping others through her new foundation. The room erupted in applause as I stepped forward to say a few words. I caught sight of a TV in the corner. The ticker at the bottom read, * Derek Sanders sentenced to 15 years for embezzlement and tax evasion *. My phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Without hesitation, I silenced it and slipped it back into my clutch. Looking out at the crowd, Lydia beaming proudly, Jake giving me a thumbs up, Carlos watching me with admiration, I felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you all, I began. It's been a challenging year, but standing here tonight, I can honestly say I wouldn't change a thing. Because sometimes you have to weather the storm to appreciate the rainbow. As applause filled the room, I caught Carlos' eye and smiled. The storm had passed, and my rainbow, it was just beginning. If you discovered a family member had been stealing from you and manipulating others for years, would you expose them publicly or handle it privately to protect the family's reputation? What do you think is the right thing to do in such a situation? Hi, I'm Ella, a 28-year-old marketing professional, and I've been dreaming of my perfect wedding since I was a little girl. But let me take you back to the moment everything changed, the day my world turned upside down. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. My little sister Lily, she was the golden child, the center of our parents' universe. Not that I minded much. We each had our roles to play, but nothing could have prepared me for the betrayal that shook me to my core. I remember walking into my parents' house one afternoon, excited to finalize the last few details of my upcoming wedding. As soon as I stepped inside, the smell of fresh paint and sawdust hit me. Confused, I wandered into the kitchen, which had been outdated just weeks before. Now, it looked like something straight out of a glossy home renovation magazine. Mom, Dad, what's all this? I asked, my voice bouncing off the brand new tiles. Oh, sweetie, isn't it wonderful? My mom gushed. We decided it was time Lily had a kitchen worthy of a chef. You know how cramped her old one was. Yeah, Ella, check this out. The space is incredible, Lily chimed in. Something cold settled in my stomach as I looked around. I didn't want to ask, but the words escaped me before I could stop them. Where did the money for this come from? My dad cleared his throat and looked away. Mom's tone was strangely firm as she replied, well, since Lily needed it more, it came from your wedding fund. My heart dropped. My wedding fund. The money you've been saving for me since I was born. I could barely get the words out as tears stung my eyes. You used it for this without even asking. Lily's face fell. Ella, I didn't know. I thought they had extra savings. Enough, I snapped, sharper than I intended. I turned back to my parents, seeing the justification in their eyes. There was no point in arguing. They'd already made their choice. I see where your priorities lie, I said coldly. Consider yourselves uninvited to the wedding. But Ella, my mom started. No, I cut her off. If my dreams mean this little to you, then I don't want you there. I walked out of that picture-perfect kitchen, each step away feeling like a crack in my heart. By the time I reached my car, the tears were flowing freely, but along with them came a new resolve, one as hard as the granite countertops that had replaced my wedding dreams. I would still have my wedding, but it would be on my terms, smaller, simpler, and entirely mine. As for my family, well, they made their choice. Now I was making mine to build a life where I came first, starting with the one day that was supposed to be about me. After canceling my parents' invitations, I thought the drama might die down. But it only intensified. As I adjusted my wedding plans, rumors began to swirl. My parents were proudly showing off Lily's luxurious new kitchen, even going so far as to call it a better investment than a wedding. Can you believe they actually said that? My best friend Tara relayed, disbelief thick in her voice as we sat over coffee. A kitchen is more important than your wedding. I let out a bitter laugh. Apparently, my life's biggest milestone is less significant than a remodel. Just when I thought my parents couldn't hurt me more, Tara shook her head. It's unbelievable. It was in that moment, fueled by fresh anger, that I decided cutting them out of my wedding wasn't enough. They needed to feel the consequences of their actions publicly. I needed an ally, someone who understood exactly what I was going through. Reconnecting with my Uncle Mike, who had distanced himself from the family years ago, was like finding a lifeline. He'd always been fed up with their shallow values. You know, Ella, he said, I've always known they favored Lily. This is a whole other level, Mike said, his voice rough with disapproval, as we sat in his cozy, book-lined study. Yeah, and now they're parading it around town like some kind of badge of honor. I replied, the frustration boiling inside me. I can't just let this go. Mike leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. What if we didn't let it go? What if we let everyone see them for who they really are? His idea was simple but brilliant, a family reunion, the kind we hadn't had in years, hosted by him. Everyone would be there, and that's where we'd expose my parents. Planning the reunion gave me something to focus on other than my scaled-down wedding. Mike and I went through guest lists and old family contacts, sending out invitations that hinted at a big surprise. By the day of the reunion, my stomach was a knot of nerves as relatives filtered into Mike's large backyard, buzzing with curiosity. I spotted my parents arriving, looking confused but cautiously pleased by the attention. Once everyone had gathered, Mike clinked his glass, calling for silence. "Family," he started, his voice booming over the murmurs. "We're here today to celebrate truth and transparency among us." My parents exchanged uneasy glances as Mike continued. And what better way to do that than to clear the air about some misconceptions? He turned to me and gave a small nod. I took a deep breath and stood up to face the crowd. "Many of you have heard about or seen my sister Lily's new kitchen." I began trying to steady my voice. "What you might not know is how it was funded." Whispers rippled through the crowd as I held up copies of bank statements and contractor bills, all clearly showing the trail of my wedding fund leading into the kitchen remodel. The money set aside for my wedding, since I was a child, was used without my consent. I continued. My dream was deemed less important than a set of fancy kitchen appliances. Lily looked mortified, staring at her feet, while my parents' faces flushed a deep shade of red. Mike took over, his voice stern. "We stand for fairness and support in this family," he said. "Today, we've seen a clear example of the opposite. Let's think about what that means for us as a family moving forward." "Why would your own parents do that?" An aunt called out, disbelief in her voice. "It seems fairness was overlooked in favor of necessity, as they saw it." I replied, the bitterness of the words heavy on my tongue. Lily, her face flushed with embarrassment, stood up. "I didn't know, Ella. I swear, I didn't know they used your money." "It's not just about the money, Lily," I said, my frustration breaking through. "It's about trust, respect." "Our intention was never to hurt anyone," Dad interjected defensively. "Lily needed help, and we made a tough call." "A tough call?" I couldn't mask the incredulity in my voice. "What about my wedding? What about my dreams?" The relatives shifted uncomfortably, the mood growing more tense with each passing second. "Seems to me," an older cousin spoke up, "you thought only of one daughter." "What about Ella?" "Yeah, how do you justify choosing between your children like that?" Another chimed in. The confrontation grew heated, with voices overlapping as family members picked sides, some expressing sympathy, others outrage. "Enough," Mike's voice cut through the clamor. "This isn't just a family squabble over money. It's a revelation of priorities. Today, we saw where those priorities lie. For some of us." The crowd quieted, the tension thick in the air. My parents' usual confident demeanor crumbled under the weight of the disapproving glares from those around them. The festive atmosphere of the reunion had been replaced by a somber, uncomfortable tone. Relatives began to trickle out, offering me sympathetic glances and pats on the back. "I'm sorry, Ella," Lily muttered as she passed by, unable to meet my eyes. "Don't be," I replied. "It's not your fault. But it's clear now, I need to step away from this, from them." The drive home was quiet. My earlier resolve to expose the truth now mingled with a deep sadness. But amid that sadness, there was a strange sense of relief. The truth was finally out, and with it, the chance to rebuild not just my wedding plans, but my life, free from the shadows of favoritism and silent resentment. After the reunion, the fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Whispers of betrayal echoed through the community, painting my parents in a light they had never expected to be seen in. Walking through town became a gauntlet of hushed conversations and sidelong glances. At the grocery store or the post office, I'd overhear snippets like, "Did you hear about the Johnsons? They pulled from their daughter's wedding fund for a kitchen remodel." "Yeah, and at the expense of their other daughter, poor Ella." The community's judgment was a cold comfort. It wasn't joy I felt, validation came slowly. But it was there, a recognition that the pain I had endured was seen, even if by strangers. One brisk Saturday morning, I ran into Lily at the local market. She approached hesitantly, a basket hanging awkwardly on her arm. "Ella, Save it, Lily. I'm not in the mood," I interrupted, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said softly. "I really didn't know." "Whether you knew or not doesn't change what happened," I replied, my tone flat. "They chose Lily, they always choose. And somehow, I'm always the one paying the price." Lily looked down, hurt filling her eyes, but this time I didn't soften. I couldn't. "I need space, Lily, space to heal and rebuild my life without the chaos our parents seemed to bring." She nodded slowly, stepping back. "I understand. If you ever, just know I'm here." I watched her walk away, her shoulders slumped, mirroring the weight I had carried for so long. But I felt lighter. stronger. Months trickled by, and rumors of my parents' misfortunes began to reach me. Their once thriving boutique, a cornerstone of their social lives, was faltering. Regular customers, once charmed by their hospitality, now saw through them. The Johnsons? No thanks, I'd overhear. Can't trust them after what they did to their daughter. As their reputation crumbled, so did their financial stability. Whispers of bankruptcy surfaced, a stark contrast to the life of comfort and privilege they had always known. In the midst of their downfall, I found my rise. My wedding day arrived, not with the pomp and grandeur I once imagined, but with a genuine, heartfelt celebration. The venue was smaller, filled only with close friends and the few family members who had stood by me through it all. Every moment was a stitch mending the fabric of my self-worth. "Congratulations, Ella," Uncle Mike toasted, his eyes twinkling with pride. "Here's to new beginnings and true happiness." The reception was filled with laughter and dancing, the air light with the scent of jasmine and the soft glow of fairy lights. It was perfect, not despite its simplicity, but because of it. My career flourished as well, taking exciting new turns. Promotions came, and with them, opportunities to speak at marketing panels, sharing my experiences and inspiring others who faced their own professional challenges. My life, once filled with a toxic chaos of unmet expectations, was now full of choices I made for myself, surrounded by people who uplifted me rather than used me. One evening, I sat on my balcony, a cool breeze playing with the chimes, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. Betrayal had been a brutal teacher, but the lessons of self-worth and resilience were invaluable. As I turned my gaze to the stars, I realized that sometimes the hardest trials forge the strongest souls. My parents' choices had set everything in motion, but it was my own choices that defined my ending. And in that quiet moment, I knew I had chosen well. That wraps up Ella's journey of facing betrayal and finding her own path to happiness. What do you think of her decision to cut ties with her family? Was it the right choice, or could things have been handled differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the story and subscribe to the channel for more vivid tales like this one. Your support helps us bring more stories to life. Hi, I'm Emily. Life was pretty sweet. I had just gotten engaged to David, the love of my life. He proposed with a stunning ring that wasn't just any piece of jewelry. It was a family heirloom passed down from my grandmother. That ring wasn't just a symbol of our upcoming marriage. It was a piece of my family's history, a link to the past, and a beacon for our future. My family is close-knit, but not without its complexities. My sister Sarah is a single mom, and life hasn't been easy for her. Financial struggles are a constant, and raising her son Alex on her own hasn't been simple. Mom and Dad often step in to help, both financially and emotionally. I do my part too, looking after Alex whenever I can, which is often because I adore that kid. One Sunday, the whole family was over at my place for dinner. The air was filled with laughter and the savory aroma of Mom's cooking. But amidst the warmth and joy, I noticed Sarah's glances at my ring. They were subtle, but there was something in her eyes, a mix of admiration and something else. Maybe envy or desperation. It troubled me. Wedding plans must be a nightmare, huh? Sarah asked as she sipped her coffee, her eyes lingering on the ring. I laughed, brushing off her tone. Actually, it's going well. David and I are enjoying the process. It's like crafting our dream day, piece by piece. That ring must have cost a fortune, she remarked with a slight edge to her voice. It's not at the cost, Sarah. It's special because it's from Grandma, you know that. Yeah, I know. Just saying, it's a lot sitting on one finger. That kind of money could solve a lot of problems. I felt a wave of discomfort rising but shrugged it off. Well, it's not going anywhere. It's meant for moments of joy, not to solve problems. Dad, always the peacemaker, chimed in. Let's not talk money now, it's family time. Emily, tell us more about the venue you picked out. The conversation moved on, but Sarah's words lingered in my mind. I loved my sister and knew her life wasn't easy, but the ring was a symbol of my future, not a lifeline for financial woes. In the weeks that followed, I continued my wedding planning, blissfully unaware that a seed of desperation had already been planted in Sarah's mind. Our lives were about to get a lot more complicated, and that Sunday's harmony was just the calm before the storm. Little did I know, my support for Sarah, despite the red flags, would soon be tested beyond anything I could have imagined. Everything came crashing down the morning I couldn't find my ring. It was a routine morning until then. coffee brewing, sun shining, and I was getting ready for work. That ring had its special spot on my dresser, but it wasn't there. Panic doesn't even begin to describe what I felt. I tore through the house, overturning everything but found nothing. My heart sank deeper with each passing second. Then a sinking realization hit me. The last family dinner, Sarah's eyes on my ring, her comments, pieces of a horrible puzzle fell into place. I didn't want to believe it, Sarah, not my sister. But I had to know. While she was at work, I made my way to her house. We never kept secrets, never needed to. Her purse was on the kitchen counter, and buried under grocery receipts was a pawn shop receipt for my ring. When Sarah came home, I confronted her immediately. Why, Sarah? How could you? She froze, then sighed, the fight leaving her as she slumped into a chair. I didn't know what else to do, Em. Alex needed that tuition money, and I thought I'd be able to buy it back before you noticed. That was Grandma's ring, Sarah. You didn't just pawn a piece of jewelry, you pawned my trust. I'm sorry, Emily. I really am. It was wrong. But I was desperate. You should have come to me. We could have figured something else out together, Sarah said, her voice trembling with regret. Our parents were the next to know. Mom cried, and Dad's face went ashen as they listened to us argue. The air was thick with disappointment and disbelief. You have to forgive her, Emily. She's your only sister, Mom pleaded, her voice quivering with emotion. No, Mom, I can't. Not this time. This was too far. The divide grew, with Sarah on one side, full of regrets, and me on the other, my heart broken, not just by the loss of the ring, but by the betrayal. It was a chasm filled with hurt and tarnished trust, and none of us knew how to bridge it. The fallout was messier than I could have imagined. Family gatherings turned awkward, filled with unspoken words and forced smiles. Friends picked sides without fully understanding the rift. Sarah tried to make amends, offering to pay back every cent, but the damage was done. The ring was just a symbol. What she really needed to return was something intangible, my trust. And that wasn't something you could simply buy back from a pawn shop. I started by reaching out to Jenna, a good friend who had also been hurt by Sarah in the past. Over coffee one morning, I spilled everything. Jenna wasn't surprised. Can't say I'm shocked, Em. She's been sketchy for a while. What are you thinking? I want to expose her, Jenna, not just for me, but for all of us she's hurt. I'm thinking social media, community boards, anywhere her actions can be spotlighted without me having to go too public. Jenna nodded, sipping her latte. Subtle but effective. Count me in. We spent hours planning, gathering stories from others, compiling evidence, and crafting posts that highlighted Sarah's pattern without stepping into defamation, just the hard truths. Each post was designed to resonate, to make others think twice about the Sarah they thought they knew. It started slowly, a shared post here, a whispered story there, but soon it picked up speed. One evening, I heard from an old neighbor. Emily, I saw your post. I couldn't believe it was Sarah doing all that. Really eye-opening. Thanks for reaching out. It's important that people know who they're really dealing with. As more people talked, Sarah's reputation began to crumble. Invitations dried up, her social circle shrank. The real kicker came when her employer caught wind of the controversy. They called her in, questioned her integrity, and by the end of the week, she was out of a job. Can you believe they fired me over some stupid rumors? Sarah confronted me one day at Mom's house, her eyes blazing. They're not rumors if they're true, Sarah. You did this to yourself. This is how you get back at me, by ruining my life. You ruined mine first, Sarah. I trusted you. She scoffed, looking around as if hoping for an ally. But even Mom and Dad had little to say, their disappointed glances telling their own story. Sarah's voice broke as she spoke again. I was desperate, Emily. I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought you'd understand. Maybe forgive me. Forgiveness isn't just given, Sarah. It's earned. And right now, I can't see myself getting there anytime soon. Leaving Sarah in the living room, I stepped out into the backyard, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. It wasn't just about exposing her. It was about setting things right, or at least as right as they could be, given the mess. The community hall buzzed with anticipation. It was the annual neighborhood gala, and normally I would be excited. Tonight, though, my stomach churned with a mix of nerves and resolve. Tonight, Sarah's actions would come to light, not just to a few, but to everyone that mattered in our community. As the evening rolled on, whispers grew into conversations. Screens displayed emails, texts, and transactions, all meticulously verified and presented. The crowd's mood shifted as the realization of Sarah's deceit sank in. "Can't believe Sarah would go that far," someone muttered nearby. "Taking advantage of her own sister, that's just cold," another added. The room's temperature seemed to drop a few degrees when Sarah walked in. Her eyes widened as she took in the screens, the whispering crowd, her world unraveling in real time. "Emily, please, can we go outside and talk?" Her voice was barely a whisper amid the growing murmurs of the hall. Outside, under the faint glow of the streetlights, Sarah looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Why did you have to do it like this, Emily? In front of everyone?" "This wasn't just about me, Sarah. It's about all the people you hurt, all the trust you broke. It wasn't right to keep that hidden. I know I messed up, but this is my life falling apart," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "It was your choices that brought us here, not mine," I replied, watching as tears rolled down her cheeks unchecked. "I know," she nodded, her voice trembling. I hope there might be a way back." "Not this time, Sarah, not for a while." As Sarah walked away, the weight of our fractured relationship settled heavily on my shoulders. But life had to go on, and I needed to reclaim mine. The next day, I returned to the pawn shop. Seeing the ring again, a symbol of so much pain and love, was bittersweet. "I'd like to buy this back," I told the owner, handing over the cash. It felt like a small victory, a piece of my past restored. The weeks that followed were a blur of preparation and celebration. David and I decided on a small wedding, just close friends and family who had stood by us through the storm. The day was perfect. As I walked down the aisle, the ring securely on my finger, I saw Sarah at the back. There was no interaction, just a silent acknowledgement of her presence. We exchanged vows under the soft glow of sunset, the simple ceremony a stark contrast to the complexities of the past months. Afterward, as David and I mingled with our guests, I felt lighter than I had in months. "You made it through, Emily," David whispered, squeezing my hand. "I did. We did." I corrected him, smiling up into his eyes. And as the night drew to a close, I realized that while the path to this point had been anything but straight, every step, every decision had been necessary. Sarah watched from a distance, and I felt a pang of sadness for what could have been. But some distances are necessary, some bridges too burn to cross again. That's the end of my story. Thanks for being here and for listening to my journey. If you found a piece of your own struggles in mine, remember, we're stronger than we think, and sometimes moving forward is the only way. Before you go, I have a question for you. If you were in Emily's shoes, would you have handled the situation with Sarah the same way? Do you believe in giving second chances to family members who betray your trust, or do some betrayals cut too deep to ever forgive? Would you have exposed Sarah publicly or dealt with it privately? I'm really curious to know how you would have approached this situation. It's a tough one, and I bet everyone has a different take on it. Let's get a conversation going in the comments. Your opinions might help someone else who's dealing with a similar situation. Do you think Emily's approach was justified, or was there a better way to handle it? And what about Sarah? Does she deserve a shot at redemption after what she did? If you enjoyed this story or found it thought-provoking, please give the video a thumbs up. It really helps us out. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. We'd love to have you join our community. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see your thoughts in the comments below. Hey everyone, I'm Jenna. Before we jump into my story, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more updates. Okay, let's dive in. Living with Sean has been a roller coaster of love and chaos, with a surprising side of family drama that no one would envy. We tied the knot 2 years ago, believing we were embarking on a life full of shared dreams and mutual respect, not just between us, but with our families as well. But things got complicated when Sean's mom, Linda, refused to let go of his ex, Diane. Yeah, you heard that right. It's like Linda never accepted their breakup. She's pulled some stunts that are hard to believe, like last Christmas when she gave Diane a family heirloom necklace right in front of me, saying it was meant for the one Sean was truly meant to be with. Ouch, right? And it doesn't stop there. Every family gathering, you can bet Diane is there, strutting around like she owns the place, with Linda looking at her like she's the daughter she never had. Sean, he's been stuck in the middle, trying to smooth things over, telling me to just ignore it. But how do you ignore a fire blazing right in your backyard? Fast forward to last week, and we get this fancy envelope in the mail. I knew it was from Linda before I even saw the return address. Inside was an invitation to her 49th birthday bash, and at the bottom, it casually mentioned that special friend Diane would also be there, like she was some kind of VIP guest. That's when I realized this wasn't just any birthday party, it was a setup for something more dramatic. I showed the invite to Sean, and I could see that familiar tightness in his jaw. "We have to go," he said, "but this time it ends. No more of this, Jenna. I promise." So there we were, strategizing like generals before a battle, how to confront Linda and finally put an end to the constant undermining. The plan was simple. Go, confront, and if needed, cut ties. Sean assured me that no matter what happened, we were in this together. As soon as we walked into Linda's house, the tension was thick in the air. The living room was decked out in lavish decor, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. Diane was already there, mingling and laughing a little too loudly, a glass of champagne in hand. "Happy you could make it, Sean," she said, fluttering her eyelashes as we approached. Sean just nodded, his grip tightening on my hand, while I managed a tight-lipped smile, saving my energy for the real showdown. It was clear that this wasn't just any birthday celebration. There was a sinister undercurrent to the festivities. And then it happened. Linda clinked her glass, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you, everyone, for joining my special day. And now I have a little surprise." Her eyes sparkled with mischief, making my stomach churn. She motioned Diane forward. "Many of you remember the lovely Diane, Sean's first love." The murmurs grew as Diane stepped up beside Linda, beaming. "Today we also commemorate what would have been their 5th anniversary of being together," Linda announced as she presented Diane with a small velvet box. Inside was the promise ring Sean had given Diane years ago. My heart sank as Diane held it up for everyone to see. "Sean, do you remember this?" Diane's voice was sugary sweet, her eyes locked on his. That was the last straw. Sean's face hardened as he stepped forward, his voice loud and clear, cutting through the chatter. "This ends now. Linda, Diane, what you're doing is disrespectful and hurtful, not just to Jenna, but to me as well. I won't stand for it any longer." "You can't be serious, Sean. We're just reminiscing about the good old days," Linda said, trying to brush it off, but it only fueled his anger. "No, Mom, it's manipulative and cruel. We came here today in good faith, and this is what we walk into. I'm done. Jenna and I, we're done with this." The room fell silent, everyone's eyes on us. Diane's smile faltered. "We're leaving," Sean declared, turning to me. Our hands linked, we made our way to the door, the weight of 1,000 eyes on our backs. Stepping outside into the cool night air felt like a cleansing breath after the stifling tension inside. "We need to rethink everything, Jenna. How we handle them, how we protect our peace," Sean said as we walked to the car, his voice firm but weary. I squeezed his hand, feeling the resolve harden in both of us. Together, I assured him, knowing that whatever came next, our united front was the only way forward. The ride home was a blur of streetlights and silence, each of us lost in our thoughts about the night's chaos. As we finally pulled into our driveway, Sean broke the silence. "We can't let this go on. It's not just about tonight, it's every gathering, every call. It's constant." "You're right, it's like they feed off the drama. We need boundaries, real ones, not just talk." The next morning, over coffee still heavy with the residue of the night before, Sean and I laid out our plan. It was drastic, but necessary. Sean pulled out his phone, scrolling through the texts, proof of the relentless interference from Linda and Diane. Later, we received a call from Diane, her voice shaky, panic lacing her words. "Sean, you need to come quick. Your mom, she had a fall. It's bad." I watched Sean's expression shift from concern to skepticism. "We'll be right there," he replied, but as soon as he hung up, he turned to me. "Something doesn't feel right. Let's be prepared for anything." Sure enough, when we arrived at Linda's, we found her and Diane sitting on the porch, perfectly fine, a smug look on Linda's face. "Got you to come, didn't it?" "We need to talk, Sean. This whole thing is just silly, using fake emergencies to manipulate us. That's low, even for you, Mom. I ignored your last text pretending Diane was hospitalized, expecting me to rush over. It's over, Linda. We're not doing this anymore." "Sean, I'm your mother. You can't just cut me out. And Diane, she's been so helpful through all of this." "It's over, Linda. Listen to me, it's over. The ride home was quiet, but the decision was clear. We needed that restraining order. It wasn't just about creating distance anymore. It was about protecting our safety and mental health. We knew what we had to do. We called a lawyer friend, Mark, who specialized in such matters. Hey Mark, we need advice on a restraining order. It's gotten out of hand with Sean's mom and his ex. Mark was quick to respond. You've got enough gear for a case. Harassment, emotional distress. Let's meet tomorrow. Bring everything, texts, emails, any records of these stunts. Meeting with Mark was eye-opening. He laid out our options, detailing the steps for filing a restraining order. It felt like a heavy decision, but with each recounted event, the necessity became clearer. Let's get this paperwork started. You two need peace to move forward, Mark advised as we provided him with all the evidence we had collected. That night, as we discussed our next steps, the idea of moving came up. We should consider getting out of here, start fresh somewhere new, I suggested, the weight of our recent troubles pressing down. Sean nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. Yeah, somewhere far from all this drama. We could really use a clean slate. The following weeks were a whirlwind of real estate listings and late-night discussions about where to move. We wanted somewhere peaceful, a community that felt like a retreat from our current turmoil. How about Asheville? It's beautiful, quiet, lots of nature. Could be the fresh start we're looking for, Sean proposed one evening, showing me pictures of misty mountains and vibrant fall colors. I smiled, imagining a life free from unwanted intrusions. Asheville sounds perfect. Let's do it. The decision made, we started the process, contacting realtors, planning a visit to Asheville, and slowly detaching ourselves from the toxic orbit of Linda and Diane. It wasn't just about moving physically, but emotionally and mentally distancing ourselves, reinforcing our boundaries with concrete actions. As our plan solidified, so did our resolve. No more unannounced visits, no more manipulative texts, just the future we chose, on our terms. Boxes filled every corner of our new home, a symbol of the fresh start we so desperately needed. Sean and I moved around the space, unpacking our lives bit by bit, piecing together a new sanctuary away from the chaos we left behind. Can you believe how quiet it is here? Sean marveled as he sat down a box labeled kitchen stuff. I know. It's like we can finally hear ourselves think. As we unpacked, every item sparked a small memory, a reminder of what we had endured and what we hoped to build here. We organized, decorated, and in each small decision, we found glimpses of the peace we sought. Later, as we sat surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, our phones beeped almost simultaneously. Messages from Linda and Diane. Attempts to breach the walls we had built. We looked at each other, a silent agreement passing between us. Time to block these numbers for good. With a few taps, the final ties were cut. The silence that followed felt like the first true breath of freedom. I can't say I won't miss some parts of the past, but I won't miss the drama, and we'll make better memories here, ones that nobody can spoil. As night fell, we took a walk around our new neighborhood. The streets were quiet, the air fresh. It felt like walking into a new life, the weight of the past slowly lifting with each step we took. Do you think we handled everything right? I asked as we paused. We did what we had to do to protect our peace. That's all anyone can do. I've learned that some ties need to be cut to make room for better ones, and it's okay to put ourselves first. Absolutely. It's about us now and our future. That night, back at our place, we reflected more on our journey. The battles with Linda and Diane had taught us more about ourselves, about our strengths and the depths of our resolve. Never thought we'd have to go through all that. Asterisk, asterisk, Jenna's closing chapter, asterisk, asterisk. I guess it's made us stronger, huh? Sean mused, a gentle smile playing on his lips. It has, I agreed. I'm just glad we're on the other side of it now, and I'm glad I had you with me through all of it. I couldn't have done it without you, Sean. Same here, Jenna, he replied, squeezing my hand. Here's to new beginnings. Our journey wasn't easy, but it brought us to a place where we could finally feel at ease. In our new home, we could build the future we'd always dreamed of, free from the shadows of the past. Our days in the new community began with morning jogs in the park and coffee at the little cafe around the corner. The locals were a friendly bunch, eager to welcome the new faces. On one of these morning runs, we met Tom and Elisa, a couple around our age who quickly became fixtures in our lives. Finally got some fresh blood in the neighborhood, Tom joked as he handed us 2 steaming cups of coffee. We were starting to think we'd have to start importing friends, Elisa added with a laugh. Their warmth was a stark contrast to the cold manipulations we left behind. It wasn't long before our weekends were filled with barbecues and game nights, slowly stitching us into the fabric of our new surroundings. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as we relaxed in our backyard, the conversation turned to the future. I've been thinking about the nursery, maybe pastel colors or something neutral, I mused, the idea of starting a family now a real and exciting prospect. Whatever you think, babe, I'm just excited at the thought of little versions of us running around, Sean said with a smile. Our laughter was light, free from the shadows of the past. It was during one of these gatherings that we heard the news about Linda and Diane. Elisa, ever the social media sleuth, brought it up casually, her phone displaying the feed. Looks like karma really does have a way of catching up. Did you see this about Diane? Curiosity piqued, I leaned over, reading the post detailing Diane's recent fallout with her job and social circle. Accusations of deceit and manipulation had left her isolated, a social pariah. She's moved away, and Linda isn't faring much better. She tried organizing another big event, and practically no one showed up. It's all over the local forums. I heard she's been selling off assets, some serious financial troubles, Tom chimed in. The news stirred a complex whirl of emotions within me, but I found myself feeling mostly relief that their toxicity was no longer our burden. It's sad in a way, but it's the result of their choices. Guess they're finally getting a taste of their own medicine. Yeah, and we're just here, enjoying our peace. No looking back now. As fall turned to winter, our home became a cozy haven. The holiday season was particularly magical, our first in the new house. Decorations lined the streets and our home glowed with lights and festive cheer. We hosted our first Thanksgiving, our friends filling the home with laughter and stories, a stark contrast to the strange family gatherings of the past. During one quiet evening, as we sat wrapped in blankets watching the snowfall, Sean pulled me closer. I've been thinking about how far we've come. It's been a journey, huh? It has, but look at us now, happier than ever. We made the right decisions, Sean, for us, for our future. I know, he said, his voice filled with conviction. And every day, I'm grateful for it, for us. We stuck together through everything. That's what made the difference. That's what will always make the difference. Nodding, I felt the truth of his words deep in my bones. Our past trials seemed distant now, lessons that taught us the value of unity and the strength of our bond. I loved you, Sean, more than ever. And I love you, Jenna. Here's to us, to our future. Outside, the world was white and quiet, but inside, our home was warm with love and the promise of brighter days. Our journey had taught us the true value of peace, and as we looked ahead, we knew we were ready for whatever came our way, together. Sean and I made the choice to cut toxic ties and start fresh. Now we turn to you. What would you have done in our situation? Would you have tried to mend things despite the ongoing issues, or would you have taken the same path? It's a tough call, and everyone's circumstances are different. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing you more stories like this. Thank you for watching, and we're excited to see what you think. Hi, I'm Linda, a 21-year-old who had to grow up faster than most. My childhood wasn't easy, especially after we lost Dad. He was the backbone of our family, and without him, everything just fell apart. I had dreams like any other teenager, finishing high school, maybe even going to college, but reality hit hard and fast. Instead of preparing for prom, I found myself signing up for a technical diploma course in graphic design. It wasn't my first choice, but it was cheaper and quicker. I can't believe you're giving up on high school, Jack sneered one afternoon as I laid out my textbooks. He was 2 years younger but had the audacity to judge my choices. It's not about giving up, Jack. Someone has to pay the bills, and since Mom can't. My voice trailed off, the weight of our situation settling on my shoulders like a concrete slab. You could have tried harder, maybe gotten a scholarship or something, he muttered, turning back to his video games. The glow from the screen lit up his indifferent face. I sighed. Not everyone gets a fairy tale, Jack. This is what we have, and I'm making the best of it. Our mother, a shadow of her former self since Dad passed, hardly ever left her room these days. When she did, it was to remind me of my duties. "You're the eldest, Linda. It's your responsibility to take care of us now," she'd say, ignoring the fact that at 21, I was barely an adult myself. "But Mom, I'm doing all I can. I work 2 jobs, I'm studying, and I'm trying to save a bit for us." I protest, feeling the burnout creeping up on me. Jack would just roll his eyes. "Why save when you can spend? You should loosen up, Linda. Buy something nice, live a little." I wanted to scream. Live a little with what time? With what money? Instead, I kept quiet. One evening, as I balanced our dwindling finances, trying to figure out how to stretch my latest paycheck, Jack burst in with news. "I passed my exams." "Barely, but yeah, I did it." "That's great, Jack." I managed a smile, genuinely relieved but dreading the inevitable. "Yeah, and now I want to go to college. You'll help with that, right? It's only fair since you didn't go." His words were casual, as if he were asking for something as simple as a ride to the mall. My heart sank. College, with what money? I thought about the little savings I'd scraped together, hidden away for emergencies or maybe, just maybe, a little something for myself. How could I deny him the opportunity, though? Wasn't it my job to sacrifice? As these thoughts swirled through my head, my mother's voice echoed from the doorway. "He deserves this chance, Linda. You'll make sure he gets it, won't you?" The pressure was immense, suffocating. I nodded, feeling the last of my teenage dreams slip away as I took on yet another burden. This was my life. Sacrifice stitched into the very fabric of my existence. As my tailoring business began to pick up, each stitch seemed to promise a better tomorrow. The clatter of my sewing machine was like music, heralding a new era of independence and maybe, just maybe, a bit of security. I'd taken to hiding my savings in a little tin box beneath a loose floorboard under the sewing machine, the only place I felt it was safe from being spent on another one of Jack's whims. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I lifted the floorboard to deposit another small victory, $50 scraped together from a rush order. But my heart stopped as my fingers felt nothing but empty space. The box was gone. Panic clawed at my chest as I searched frantically around the room, hoping I had merely moved it and forgotten. My search ended abruptly with the heavy steps of my mother entering the room, her face unusually flushed with excitement. "Linda, you won't believe it. Jack has found a wonderful girl. They're getting engaged next month." Engaged? The word felt foreign, distant, drowned out by the ringing in my ears. "Mom, where's the tin box that was here, under of that old thing?" She waved a dismissive hand, her eyes gleaming with a mix of guilt and justification. "I used it, Linda. It was for a good cause. You'll understand." "Use it for what, Mom?" My voice was sharp, the edges of fear and anger blurring. "For Jack's engagement ring, of course. Such a beautiful diamond. It symbolizes hope, a new beginning for our family." "A new beginning," I repeated, hollow. "With my savings? My future?" She took a step back, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Your duty is to this family, Linda. We needed that money. It's better spent on something that brings us all together." That was for me, for my future. How could you? The betrayal burned hotter than the anger, and tears welled up unbidden. "You're being selfish, Linda, always thinking about yourself. This family has given you everything." Everything. The word escaped me as a bitter laugh. "I've given everything, my time, my dreams, my money." "What have you given me, Mom?" "Guilt, obligations." "Linda, you need to calm down. Think of your brother's happiness. My happiness matters too, Mom. Or doesn't that count for anything?" She shook her head, disappointment etched into her features. "I thought you were stronger than this, more giving. I guess I was wrong." That was the moment I knew I had to leave. The strings that tied me to this home, woven tight with duty and sacrifice, have frayed beyond repair. "Mom, I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice steady, the decision clear. "I'm leaving. I need to find a place where I'm valued, not just used." Her face crumbled, a mix of anger and desperation. "You'll be back. You need us." "No, Mom, I don't." With those final words, I packed my essentials. The sewing machine, my loyal companion, was the last thing I loaded into my car. As I drove away, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror, a weight lifted. I was free, heading toward a future I would shape on my terms, stitch by hard-earned stitch. The first night after leaving home was the hardest. I ended up at a small motel, the kind of place you hope never to stay in twice. As I unpacked my sewing machine and fabrics from my car, the weight of my decision settled around me like a heavy cloak. Was I brave or just foolish? Each uncertain thought was like a stitch out of place. But I pushed through, setting up my makeshift workspace on the rickety table by the window. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I found a small studio apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine alone. The space was cramped, barely enough for my bed and work area, but it represented something vital: freedom. Setting up my sewing machine, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Here, every piece I created was a testament to my independence. Business wasn't easy to come by at first. I spent days visiting local boutiques and coffee shops, my portfolio in hand, pitching my tailoring services. Rejection stung, yet with each no, I felt my resolve harden. Next time, I would tell myself, they'll say yes. And eventually, they did. A boutique owner admired the custom alterations I proposed for her shop's aesthetic and gave me my first big break. As my business began to grow, so did my confidence. I launched a small online store showcasing my designs and alterations. The first time an order notification pinged on my phone, I laughed out loud. It was a sound of pure joy. Orders started to trickle in, and my days were filled with measuring, cutting, and sewing, each piece a building block in the new life I was constructing. I started making new connections, both professionally and personally. At a local entrepreneur meetup, I met other small business owners who shared their journeys, and their stories fueled my own ambitions. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. As the months rolled by, my tailoring business not only stabilized but began to flourish. Orders flowed in steadily, and I had even started taking on an apprentice to help with the workload. It was during one of those busy afternoons, the hum of the sewing machines filling the air, that my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in months. Home. Hesitating only for a moment, I answered, the familiar voice of my mother crackling through. "Hello, Linda. It's been a while. We miss you." The words, meant to tug at my heartstrings, now felt distant. "Hi, Mom. What's going on?" There was a pause, a shuffling of feet on the other end. "Well, we're in a bit of a situation here. Jack's planning to buy a house, and he's come up a bit short. We thought maybe you could help." The request hung in the air, a well-worn tune. I took a deep breath, my hand tightening around the phone. "Mom, I'm really focused on growing my business right now. I can't." "But Linda, is for your brother." "For family," she pressed, her voice taking on that familiar pleading tone. "I know, Mom, but my answer is still no. I have responsibilities here, to my business, to myself," I said, my voice firm, the product of many nights rehearsing this moment in my mind. There was silence, then a harsh laugh. "Jack was right. You've changed, become selfish, since you left." The conversation ended soon after with a curt goodbye. I put down the phone, my heart racing. But this time, there was no guilt, only a sense of empowerment. Choosing myself was new, but it felt right. The attempts to draw me back didn't stop there. A few days later, Jack called. His tone was casual, as if we were discussing the weather. "Hey, Linda. Just thought I'd give it a shot, about the money. It would really help me out." "Jack, I'm glad you called, but I'm not able to lend money right now. I'm investing everything back into my business," I explained, hoping he'd understand without needing further justification. "Yeah, figured as much. Mom said you'd say no. Guess family doesn't mean much anymore, huh?" His words were designed to wound. "It means a lot, Jack, but so does my future. I'm sure you can understand that," I replied, keeping the hurt out of my voice. We hung up with a promise to keep in touch, a promise I knew was as thin as the fabric scraps on my workshop floor. Over time, their calls became less frequent, and I focused on my work, on building connections that were supportive and uplifting. My business thrived, and with each success, the echoes of their pleas faded, replaced by the voices of customers praising my work, the laughter of my apprentice learning the trade, and my own thoughts planning for the future. I had learned that saying no could be just as powerful as saying yes, especially when it came to protecting my dreams and well-being. Each no was a stitch in the fabric of my new life, one that I was determined to tailor to my own design. The evening of the local Small Business Awards was a crisp autumn night, the kind where the air smelled of possibilities. My tailoring shop had been nominated for Small Business of the Year, a recognition I never imagined possible when I first set up my sewing machine in that cramped studio apartment. As I stepped into the banquet hall, a flutter of nervous excitement danced in my stomach. The room buzzed with the chatter of local entrepreneurs and community leaders, their faces glowing under the soft lights. My eyes scanned the crowd, not for familiar faces from my past, but for the new connections I had made, the people who had supported and believed in my vision. When they called my name as the winner, a wave of applause washed over me as I made my way to the podium. The weight of the trophy in my hands felt like a tangible validation of all the nights spent working late, all the decisions made in the solitude of my shop. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady but emotional. "This award isn't just about the quality of stitches we produce or the fabrics we transform. It's about resilience, about the belief in oneself, and the courage to pursue a dream despite the odds." After the ceremony, as I mingled among well-wishers and fellow entrepreneurs, the sense of pride and accomplishment was overwhelming. It wasn't just about the recognition. It was about having made it on my own terms, about not just surviving, but thriving. As I unlocked the door to my apartment, the quiet hum of my sewing machine greeting me, I felt a deep, resonant peace. I was exactly where I was meant to be, stitching my future with threads of courage and determination. And that was the ultimate victory. That brings us to the end of Linda's journey to independence and self-realization. How do you think you would have handled the situation if you were in Linda's shoes? Would you have made the same tough decisions to cut ties for your own well-being, or would you have tried to mend the relationship despite the challenges? Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed Linda's story and subscribe to the channel for more tales. Hi, I'm Sarah, a 45-year-old single mom and a nurse from Detroit. I'm running on just 4 hours of sleep. My scrubs still smell like the hospital, and I'm juggling 2 teenagers while my mother-in-law breathes down my neck. Yep, just another Tuesday in paradise. My daughter Amber is a real lifesaver, always helping out and keeping her grades up. But my son Jake, let's just say he's giving me more gray hairs than my job in the ER. Jake, for the love of God, would it kill you to pick up your dirty socks? I yelled up the stairs, knowing full well I'd end up picking them up later. Leave me alone, Mom, I'm busy, came his muffled reply. I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might stick that way. Busy doing what? Plotting world domination from your Xbox. Amber walked in, looking exhausted from her part-time job at the mall. Don't bother, Mom, he's been like that all week. I sighed, pulling her into a hug. I don't know what I'd do without you, kiddo. Just then, my phone buzzed. Great, another lecture from the queen of criticism herself. My mother-in-law, Barbara. Sarah, darling, I hope you're not working another night shift. Those children need a mother, not a ghost. Barbara's voice dripped with judgment. Gritting my teeth, I replied, Barbara, I appreciate your concern, but I've got this under control. Do you? Because I heard Jake skip school again yesterday. Dan, how does she always know? Handling it, Barbara. Is there something else you needed? She paused, and I could practically hear the judgment through the phone. Well, I was wondering if you'd given any thought to Amber's graduation gift. A nice piece of jewelry, perhaps. I smiled, thinking of the surprise I had planned. Actually, I got something special in mind. Later that week, I snuck up to a used car lot during my lunch break. Amber had been saving up for a beater, but with college coming up, I wanted to give her a head start. I found a decent Honda Civic, nothing fancy, but reliable. As I signed the papers, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Jake wouldn't be getting a car anytime soon. Not with his current behavior, but Amber had earned this. Of course, nothing stays secret for long in this family. Somehow, Barbara found out about the car and lost her mind. A car for Amber, and what about Jake? How could you be so blatantly unfair? I tried to explain. Barbara, Amber's going to college. She needs reliable transportation. Jake can't even keep his room clean, let alone handle a car. You're playing favorites, Sarah. Mark my words, this will come back to bite you. Jake will resent you for this, and I won't stay quiet about it. As I hung up the phone, my stomach churned. Barbara was a master manipulator, and I knew she'd make good on her threat to tell Jake. Graduation was just around the corner, and instead of celebrating, I was bracing for a family meltdown. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a storm that would turn our lives upside down. But hey, that's life as a single mom, right? Always expecting the unexpected and hoping for the best. If only I knew then what I know now. I was bustling around the backyard, making sure everything was perfect for Amber's graduation party. The grill was fired up, streamers were hanging, and a big congrats, grad banner fluttered in the breeze. I even managed to wrangle Jake into helping, though he was soaking by the cooler. "Jake, honey, can you grab some more ice from the garage?" I asked. He rolled his eyes. "Why can't Amber do it? It's her stupid party." "Because she's getting ready, and I'm asking you. Please?" Just as Jake trudged off, Amber came out, beaming in her new dress. "Mom, this is amazing." "Thank you so much." I hugged her tight. "You deserve it, sweetie. I'm so proud of you." The guests started arriving, and soon the backyard was buzzing with chatter and laughter. I was just about to reveal the car surprise when I spotted a familiar figure marching through the gate. "Oh no," I muttered under my breath. "Sarah." Barbara's shrill voice cut through the party noise. What a lovely gathering, though I don't recall receiving an invitation. I plastered on a fake smile. "Barbara, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you." "Clearly," she sniffed, eyeing the decorations. "I suppose my invitation got lost in the mail again." Before I could respond, Amber rushed over. "Grandma, you made it." Barbara's demeanor softened slightly. "Of course, dear. I wouldn't miss my only granddaughter's graduation." I caught Jake's eye across the yard, his face darkening at Barbara's words. Trying to salvage the situation, I called for everyone's attention. "All right, everyone, it's time for Amber's big surprise." I led the group to the front yard, where the Honda was parked with a big bow. Amber's eyes went wide. "No way, Mom. Is this for real?" I nodded, grinning. "You've earned it, honey." As Amber hugged me, squealing with joy, I heard Barbara's voice cut through the excitement. "Well, isn't this generous? I do hope you're planning something equally impressive for Jake's graduation next year." The crowd went quiet as Jake stepped forward, his face a mix of hurt and anger. "You bought her a car." I tried to explain. "Jake, honey, it's not what you think." But Barbara cut me off. "It's exactly what it looks like, Jake. Your mother clearly has a favorite child." "Barbara, that's enough." I snapped, but the damage was done. Jake turned to me, his voice shaking. "Is that true, Mom? You love Amber more than me?" "Of course not, sweetie. I love you both equally." I tried to reassure him. He yelled, causing some of the guests to gasp. "You're always on my case, but Amber can do no wrong. And now this." Amber tried to intervene. "Jake, come on. It's not like that." "Shut up," he snarled. "You're always taking her side. Both of you suck." With that, Jake stormed off, slamming the front door behind him. The party dissolved into awkward murmurs. Barbara stood there, looking smug. "Well, I hate to say I told you so, Sarah, but—" "Get out," I hissed. "Now." As Barbara left, I turned to find Amber in tears. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause all this drama." I hugged her tightly. "This isn't your fault, sweetie. It's mine. I should have handled this better." The rest of the party was a bust. Later that night, as I cleaned up, I heard Jake's voice drifting from his room. He was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. "Yeah, man, I'm telling you, she's got it coming. No, listen, I've got a plan. It'll teach her to play favorites." My blood ran cold. What was he up to? I wanted to burst in and confront him, but something held me back. Maybe if I gave him some space, he'd cool off. But as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much worse. How had everything gone so wrong so fast? And more importantly, how was I going to fix it? The weeks after Amber's graduation were like walking on eggshells. Every time I tried to talk to Jake, he'd either ignore me or snap back with some smart-ass comment. It was driving me up the wall. One morning, I cornered him in the kitchen. "Jake, we need to talk about what happened at the party," I said. He just grunted, pouring himself some cereal. "Look, I know you're upset about the car, but—" He slammed the milk carton down. "You don't know, Mom. Just leave me alone." "Hey, watch your language. I'm still your mother." "Could have fooled me," he muttered, shouldering past me. I sighed, rubbing my temples. This was getting us nowhere. Later that week, I was doing laundry when I noticed Jake's pockets were full of cash, like way more than a kid his age should have. My stomach dropped. That night, I confronted him. "Jake, where'd you get all this money?" I asked. He shrugged, not looking up from his phone. "Got a job. No after-school gig pays this much. What are you into?" He finally met my eyes, and the coldness there scared me. None of your business. You're not the only one who can keep secrets in this family. Before I could respond, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The next day, I was reorganizing the medicine cabinet when I noticed something off. My prescription for pain meds from my back surgery was nearly empty. I barely touched the damn things. Amber, I called out, have you seen anyone messing with the medicine cabinet? She appeared in the doorway, looking confused. No, why? I shoved her the bottle. Her eyes went wide. You don't think Jake? I nodded grimly. I'm afraid so. What are you going to do? I don't know, honey. I just don't know. A few days later, I was at work when my phone rang. It was the school principal. Miss Thompson, this is Principal Anderson. There's been an incident involving Jake. The police are here. My heart stopped. What? What happened? I think it's best if you come down here immediately. I rushed to the school, my mind racing. When I got there, 2 cops were leading Jake out in handcuffs. He looked scared shitless. What the hell is going on? I demanded. One of the officers turned to me. Mom, we caught your son selling prescription drugs on school grounds. He's facing some serious charges. There has to be some mistake. Jake, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. He just looked at me, his eyes full of anger and fear. I'm sorry, Mom. I really screwed up this time. As they took him away, I collapsed onto a nearby bench, my whole world spinning. How had it come to this? Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I heard a familiar voice. Well. I hate to say I told you so, Sarah, but... I looked up to see Barbara standing there, looking way too pleased with herself. What the hell are you doing here, Barbara? I demanded. She sat down next to me, uninvited. I heard about poor Jake's predicament. Such a shame. If only someone had been paying more attention to him. I narrowed my eyes. What are you talking about? She smiled, all fake sympathy. Oh, Sarah, did you really think Jake came up with this rebellious streak all on his own? He needed someone to confide in, someone who understood how neglected he felt. The pieces clicked into place. You manipulative. I seethed. You've been egging him on this whole time, haven't you? She shrugged nonchalantly. I merely pointed out the obvious. You clearly favor Amber. Jake needed to know someone was on his side. I stood up, shaking with rage. Get out. Now, and don't you dare come near my family again. Or I swear to God, Barbara, I'll make you regret it. As she sauntered away, I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. I had to call a lawyer, figure out how to get Jake out of this mess. But one thing was crystal clear. Barbara had to go for good this time. I was pacing outside the interrogation room when Jake's lawyer, Mr. Martinez, came out looking grim. How bad is it? I asked, my stomach in knots. He sighed. It's not great, Miss Thompson, but Jake's agreed to cooperate. He's telling them everything. Just then, a detective approached us. Miss Thompson, your son's given us some interesting information. You might want to hear this. Inside, Jake looked up at me, his eyes red and puffy. Mom, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. What are you talking about, honey? I asked gently. He took a deep breath. It wasn't just me. Grandma Barbara was the one supplying the pills. She said it would teach you a lesson for favoring Amber. My jaw dropped. Are you serious? The detective chimed in. We've got enough to bring her in for questioning. This changes things significantly for Jake. I turned to Mr. Martinez. What does this mean for my son? If he continues to cooperate, we might be able to get him into a diversion program instead of jail time, but he'll need to go to rehab. Jake nodded frantically. I'll do it, Mom. I swear I'll get clean. As we left the station, my phone buzzed. It was Barbara. Sarah, darling, I heard Jake's been released. I'm so relieved. I cut her off. Save it, Barbara. The cops are on their way to pick you up. How could you do this to your own grandson? There was a long pause. I don't know what you're talking about. Cut the crap. Jake told them everything. You're going down for this. Her voice turned desperate. Sarah, please, you can't let this happen. I'm family. No, you're not. Not anymore. Goodbye, Barbara. I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Later that week, we were sitting in our first family therapy session. Amber reached out and squeezed Jake's hand. I'm sorry I made you feel left out, bro. When you get your license back, we can share the car if you want. Jake gave a small smile. Thanks, sis. And Mom, I'm sorry for everything. I know you were just trying to help. I felt tears welling up. We've all made mistakes, but we're going to get through this together. As we left the therapist's office, I saw Barbara being led away in handcuffs on the evening news. Karma had finally caught up with her. Looking at my kids, I knew we had a long road ahead. But for the first time in ages, I felt hope. We were going to be all right. The story has ended, but now I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you ever forgive Barbara for manipulating Jake and nearly destroying our family? Or is some betrayal too deep to come back from? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help someone else dealing with toxic family drama. If you enjoyed this wild ride, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, the drama never stops in this family. Hi everyone, I'm Emma, a 28-year-old nurse at Memorial Hospital, and I've got a story that's straight out of a drama series. It's about my mother-in-law, Jennifer, and how she tried to take over my life. It all started 2 years ago when I met Brian at a friend's barbecue. He was charming, kind, and we hit it off instantly. After a whirlwind romance, we tied the knot in a beautiful ceremony. That's when I first noticed something odd about Jennifer. At the time, I chalked it up to wedding stress. "You're part of our close-knit family now," she said at our first dinner after the honeymoon. "I'll guide you through everything." I didn't realize that her guidance was code for control. Things escalated after I got pregnant with our daughter, Esla. Jennifer's true colors came out. She started showing up unannounced, saying things like, "A first-time mother needs her family close by." She'd barge into our home, take over tasks without asking, and constantly instruct Brian. "Make sure Emma doesn't lift anything heavy. In fact, I'll come by every day to help." My best friend Julia, who works with me at the hospital, was the first to notice something was off. During one of Jennifer's surprise visits, she whispered, "Girl, is she always like this?" as Jennifer reorganized my kitchen cabinets without so much as a word to me. "She means well," I said, though I was starting to feel uneasy. After Isla was born, things went from bad to worse. Jennifer criticized everything: how I held the baby, how I fed her, even how I dressed her. "The baby needs another layer, Emma." Really, in my day, we knew how to care for infants properly. My parents, Sonia and Alexander, lived 2 hours away and tried to support me from afar. "Sweetheart," my mom reassured me during one of our calls, "you're doing a wonderful job with Isla. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." But Brian, he didn't see the problem. "Mom's just trying to help, babe. She raised me just fine, didn't she?" he'd say whenever I brought it up. "That's not the point," I argued. "I feel like she's taking over our lives." Jennifer even started telling neighbors she was practically raising Isla because I worked full-time. Such a shame. I overheard her telling Mrs. Parker next door. "Mothers these days choose work over their babies. Thank goodness I'm here to step in." Julia became my rock during those early months. "Document everything," she advised. "Every criticism, every unannounced visit, every time she undermines you. Trust me, you'll need this later." At the time, I didn't understand why she was so insistent, but I followed her advice. Then came the day that changed everything. Asla was 3 months old, and I had just finished feeding her when Jennifer barged through the front door without knocking. Why isn't she in the outfit I bought her? And honestly, Emma, breastfeeding again. I brought formula. It's so much better for tracking how much she eats. I was too stunned to respond. This became a pattern. She showed up daily, sometimes multiple times, and even inserted herself into Isla's first pediatrician appointment. While Dr. Thompson and I reviewed Isla's growth chart, Jennifer burst into the exam room. "I simply had to be here," she announced. "A grandmother has every right to know about her grandbaby's health. Now, doctor, I've noticed some concerning things about how she's being fed." "Ma'am," Dr. Thompson interrupted, "I'll need you to wait outside. This is a private appointment." That night, Brian and I had our biggest fight yet. "Your mother completely undermined me at the doctor's office," I said. "She's just concerned about Isla. Why are you always so defensive?" He shot back. "Defensive? Brian, she's telling everyone I'm an unfit mother. Mrs. Parker asked me if I leave Isla crying for hours while I chat on the phone." Things took an even darker turn when Julia came over one afternoon. While Jennifer was watching Isla, we noticed my bedroom drawers slightly open and my diary sitting out on the shelf, crinkled, as though it had been read. She's going through my personal things, I whispered, horrified. Jennifer's interference didn't stop there. Parenting books I purchased disappeared, replaced by outdated ones she brought over. And then I discovered a spare key on Brian's carrying. Oh, Mom asked for a spare key for emergencies, Brian explained casually. It makes sense, right? You gave her a key to our house without asking me? I demanded. Don't start, Emma. She's family. Julia sat with me one evening, going over the log I'd been keeping. Look at this pattern, she said. The unannounced visits, the rumors, the snooping. She's trying to control your entire life. It all clicked when I found messages on Brian's phone. Jennifer had been texting him, painting me as unstable. Your wife seems overwhelmed, honey. Maybe she needs professional help. I worried about my grandbaby. That was Jennifer's mantra, and every day brought new battles. One day, I came home from work to find she'd rearranged Isla's nursery, claiming the original layout was dangerous. Another time, she scheduled a photographer for Isla's 3-month pictures without consulting me, then called me difficult when I said I couldn't attend. I've never seen such disrespect for family traditions, she declared to our church group. In my day, young mothers appreciated help instead of being so stubborn. The final straw came when I caught her rifling through our financial documents. She was supposed to be watching Isla. Just trying to help organize things, dear, she said with a sweet smile. You seem so overwhelmed. That was it. I knew something had to change. But I had no idea how far Jennifer would go to maintain control. After 6 exhausting months, I planned a weekend trip to visit my parents with Isla. They hadn't seen their granddaughter in weeks. We'll leave Friday after my shift, I told Brian. You're going to your parents? Well, I'll come too. Isla needs my supervision during the car ride, Jennifer announced. No, Jennifer, this is my time with my family. Your family? Her voice sharpened. I am your family. Brian, tell your wife she's being ridiculous. Brian shifted uncomfortably. Maybe Mom could come. Absolutely not. I'm taking my daughter to see my parents. Jennifer's face flushed red. If you take my grandbaby without proper supervision, I'll be forced to take action. You're clearly not thinking straight. Are you threatening me? I asked, my voice steady but firm. I'm protecting my granddaughter. I packed our bags anyway, and Friday afternoon, Isla and I hit the road. 20 minutes into the drive, my phone blew up with frantic messages from Brian. Mom's hysterical. She's saying you've kidnapped Isla. Come back now. Then my parents called. Emma, my dad said, his voice tight, the police are here. They're saying something about a kidnapping. When I arrived at my parents' house, I walked into the living room to find 2 officers standing awkwardly. Jennifer had told them I was mentally unstable and had taken Isla during a psychotic break. Here's Isla's birth certificate. Here's my marriage license, I said, holding them out with shaking hands. I'm her mother, taking her to visit her grandparents. The officers' expressions shifted as they realized what had happened. Ma'am, one of them said to me, making a false police report is a serious offense. Your mother-in-law could face charges. My mom was livid. That woman called the police on my daughter for visiting us. Alexander, call our lawyer. Minutes later, Brian stormed in, having driven 2 hours after Jennifer's meltdown. Where's Isla? Is she okay? He asked breathlessly. She's fine, I said, glaring at him. Sir, one officer interrupted. Your mother lied to the police. She could be charged with filing a false report. Brian's face crumpled as reality set in. During the chaos, Julia called. Emma, you need to know something, she said urgently. Remember Linda? Brian's ex? Jennifer did the same thing to her, called her workplace with false accusations, spread rumors, even called the police once, claiming Linda stole from her. I found her on Facebook. She's willing to make a statement. Brian overheard everything on speakerphone. His face went pale. There's more, Julia continued. 3 other women in your church group reached out to me. Jennifer's been doing this for years, controlling, manipulating, destroying relationships. They're all willing to come forward. The police left with a warning for Jennifer, and Brian collapsed onto my parents' couch, his head in his hands. I had no idea, he whispered. All these years, Mom's been. Now you know why I had to get away, I said. My phone buzzed again and again with Jennifer's desperate messages. She was telling everyone I'd had a breakdown and kidnapped Isla. But this time, her lies would cost her everything. No more playing nice. Ryan said, looking up at me. That woman needs to face consequences. He was right. Looking at my sleeping daughter, I knew I had to act. With Julia's help, I compiled everything: text messages, witness statements, photos, and a detailed log of incidents. My parents hired a top-notch attorney who specialized in family law. We got more than enough for a restraining order, the attorney confirmed. Jennifer's pattern of harassment is clear. At the courthouse, Jennifer's facade cracked. "You're really doing this to your own mother?" she shrieked at Brian in the hallway. "After everything I've sacrificed for you?" "No, Mom," Brian said firmly. "You did this. I've seen the evidence, the lies, the manipulation, what you did to Linda and everyone else. You crossed every line." The judge reviewed the evidence carefully. My documentation included statements from Linda and 3 other women Jennifer had terrorized over the years. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady. She even enlisted her friend, Officer Tom, to perform unauthorized background checks on me and my family. She used that information to threaten and harass us. That revelation sparked an immediate internal affairs investigation. Officer Tom faced suspension and possible termination for misusing police resources at Jennifer's behest. The case took an unexpected turn when Samantha, Brian's sister-in-law, arrived to testify. Her voice shook as she shared her story. "She convinced my husband I was cheating and almost destroyed our marriage," Samantha said. "She hacked my social media, spread rumors at church. Jennifer does this to anyone she feels threatens her control." The judge didn't hesitate. The restraining order was granted. Jennifer was legally barred from contacting us or coming within 500 feet of Isla. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer glared at me, venom in her voice. "This is what you wanted all along, isn't it? To steal my son and destroy our family. You won't get away with this." "No, Jennifer," I replied calmly. "You did that all by yourself. Every lie, every manipulation, every toxic action, that was all you." Brian and I began intensive marriage counseling. During one particularly emotional session, he broke down completely. "I should have protected you and Isla," he said through tears. "I was so blind. She's manipulated me my whole life, and I let her do the same to you." "We're healing now," I said, holding his hand. "That's what matters. Isla will have a better future because of these changes." The truth about Jennifer spread through the community like wildfire. Her church friends stopped calling. Her bridge club discreetly removed her from their roster. Women she had tormented for years finally felt free to share their stories on social media and in local groups. I threw myself into my work, earning a promotion to head nurse. The hospital administration praised my leadership during crisis. "Emma," my supervisor said, "we'd like you to lead our new maternal care unit. Your experience and compassion make you perfect for this role." Meanwhile, Jennifer's life fell apart. She attempted desperate damage control, playing the victim on social media, but no one bought it. She lost her volunteer positions, her social circle, and the facade of respectability she had built over the years. One evening, as I looked at photos of Isla surrounded by genuine love and joy, I felt truly free. Jennifer's attempts to control and manipulate had failed spectacularly. She had lost everything: her son, her granddaughter, her reputation, and her social standing. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You'll regret this someday. No one can keep me from my family forever." I blocked the number without hesitation. Jennifer would never understand that she caused her own downfall. Meanwhile, Isla would grow up surrounded by healthy relationships and real love, never knowing the toxicity of her grandmother's manipulation. That, I realized, was the best revenge of all: living well and breaking the cycle of abuse. This story was a social experiment, and now I have some sensitive questions for you. When dealing with toxic in-laws, where do you draw the line between keeping the peace and protecting your child? Jennifer used the police and community against me, but some say I should have been more patient for the sake of family unity. "Hi, I'm Jessica Elaine. It's lovely to see you," I said, eyeing the flickering candles. "But you know, these might not be safe to leave burning without supervision." My mother-in-law, Elaine, was busy placing yet another candle on the shelf above our new stove. "Oh, Jessica, darling, these are perfectly safe. I've done this 1,000 times at my house," she waved off my concern dismissively. Mark, caught between his mother's habits and my caution, tried to ease the tension. "Mom, Jess is probably right. We shouldn't take any risks in the new kitchen." Elaine looked at us with a tight smile. It's just for tonight's dinner. The candles make everything feel so much more welcoming. The evening unfolded with Elaine's usual flair. Guests arrived, charmed by the soft candlelight and her extravagant decorations. Claire and Tom, our neighbors, entered looking around with a mix of admiration and concern. "Isn't this a bit much, Jess?" Claire whispered as she hugged me hello. I sighed. I tried to talk her out of it. Tom, overhearing, grinned. Elaine never knows when to stop. Remember the Christmas lights fiasco? I chuckled, recalling the neighborhood blackout caused by Elaine's over-the-top holiday display. Dinner was lively, the table buzzing with conversation and laughter. Elaine was in her element, playing the grand hostess. Mark kept refilling glasses, trying to smooth over his mother's more intrusive remarks directed at me. After dessert, as the guests trickled out, I noticed a few candles still flickering in the dim kitchen. "Elaine, let me blow these out before we head to bed." "Oh, leave them, Jessica," she said with a wave of her hand. "They're long-burning and perfectly safe. They'll go out by morning." Already heading towards the guest room, she didn't wait for my reply. Exhausted, I decided not to argue. Mark and I went to bed, the faint scent of vanilla candles wafting through the house. Hours later, a loud pop jolted us awake. "What was that?" Mark shot up, alarmed. We rushed into the kitchen and were met with a terrifying sight. Flames licking up the curtains, the fire spreading quickly. "Fire! Fire!" I screamed, grabbing my phone to call 911 while Mark struggled with the fire extinguisher. The fire department arrived swiftly, but the damage was already done. Our beautiful kitchen, where we had envisioned so many happy memories, was now a charred and soaked mess. Sitting on the curb, watching the firefighters work, Mark put his arm around me. "This is a disaster," he muttered, his voice heavy with disbelief. "It was the candles," I whispered, tears of frustration and fear staining my eyes. I told her this could happen." Elaine, wrapped in a blanket, stood nearby, her face a mixture of shock and disbelief. I didn't think." Claire and Tom came over, offering coffee and comfort. "You can stay with us tonight," Claire said softly. Tom gave Elaine a stern look. "You really need to start listening, Elaine. This could have been avoided." As dawn broke, the fire was out, but the full extent of the damage became heartbreakingly clear in the morning light. And in that moment, a new resolve formed in me. This wasn't just an accident, it was a wake-up call. I couldn't let Elaine's recklessness slide anymore. Things had to change, and I was going to make sure they did. The morning after the fire, Mark and I sat at the kitchen table, now a makeshift command center, with insurance papers and repair estimates scattered everywhere. Our once perfect kitchen was a ruin, and with each passing moment, the weight of what had happened felt heavier. "Jess, we'll get through this," Mark said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I nodded, trying to muster a smile. "I know, it's just overwhelming." Later that afternoon, Claire stopped by, carrying a basket of homemade muffins. "Jess, there's something you should know about those candle holders Elaine used. She got them from my store, and I warned her they were part of a recall. They're a fire hazard." A chill ran down my spine. She knew, and she still used them. Claire nodded solemnly. "I'm afraid so. I thought you should know." Fury and betrayal swirled inside me. I needed answers, but confronting Elaine had to be done carefully, with undeniable proof. That evening, when she came over to see the damage, the first time she'd visited since the fire, I was ready. "So, you were warned about the candles?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the anger churning inside me. Elaine stiffened, her eyes darting away. "It was just a precaution, Jessica. Those warnings are often overblown." "Overblown?" I pressed, feeling Mark's tense gaze on us. "They were recalled, Elaine, because they could cause fires." Mark stepped in, his voice tight with frustration and desperation. "Mom, why didn't you listen to Claire? You put our home at risk." Elaine bristled, her tone defensive. "I was just trying to make things nice. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." As Mark and Elaine argued, I could see the growing rift between them. Mark was torn between the family he grew up with and the life we were trying to build. The days after the fire were a blur of contractors and insurance agents constantly in and out of the house. One evening, as we sat amidst the chaos, Mark sighed deeply. "I can't believe she'd be so careless, Jess. I don't even know what to say to her anymore." I reached for his hand, offering a gentle squeeze. We might need to set some boundaries with her for our own peace. He sighed again, nodding. Yeah, I think you're right. It's just hard, you know. She's my mom. As weeks passed, our focus shifted from rebuilding the kitchen to trying to salvage our relationships. But the strain was palpable. Conversations with Elaine became increasingly sparse and tense. She remained defensive, unwilling to fully acknowledge her role in the disaster. Each day brought new challenges, and it became clear that the incident had changed everything. Our lives would never be the same. One evening, weeks after the fire, Claire, Tom, and I huddled in our living room, quietly discussing what needed to be done. The atmosphere in our home was still thick with tension, a constant reminder of Elaine's recklessness. We need to show everyone who she really is, not just tell them, Claire suggested, her determination clear. Tom nodded. I've got footage from my home security cameras from that night. It shows the fire starting from those candles she left burning. And I think I can get more. I felt the weight of the decision, but I knew it was necessary. We can compile it all into something undeniable. The plan was set. Elaine was due to be honored at an upcoming community gala for her charitable work. A perfect opportunity, given her love for public acclaim. Over the next few days, with Tom's tech skills and Claire's discreet inquiries, we gathered footage and testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed Elaine's irresponsible behavior over the years. Everything was edited into a respectful but revealing video. The night of the gala, the community hall buzzed with excitement. Elaine, dressed in her usual flamboyant style, glowed under the admiration of her peers. Mark and I arrived just in time, my stomach a knot of nerves as the honorary mentions began. When Elaine stepped up to receive her accolades, ready to bask in the glow of her supposed selflessness, the lights dimmed. The video began. At first, it showed Elaine at various community events, smiling and shaking hands. But soon the tone shifted. The video cut to the night of the fire, flames visibly flickering in the windows of our home. Next came footage of Elaine being warned by Claire at the store, dismissing the recall with a careless wave of her hand. The room grew silent, tension filling the air as the video played on, revealing not only the fire but other incidents, Elaine's reckless comments at meetings, her negligence at public events. It painted a damning picture of chronic disregard for others' safety. When the lights came back on, Elaine stood frozen. Her face was pale, her eyes darting around the room, searching for support, but the murmurs had already started, growing louder as people expressed their shock and disbelief. How could she be so careless? I can't believe she knew about the risks. Elaine tried to speak, her voice shaky. This isn't the whole story. I've always had the best intentions. The crowd's warm smiles turned cold as the reality of Elaine's negligence sank in. People she had known for years began to turn their backs, whispering about the deception. Claire leaned over to me. It needed to be done, Jess. Now everyone knows. Tom added, she can't brush this off, not this time. Mark stood beside me, a mixture of relief and sadness on his face. I'm sorry it came to this, Jess, but maybe now Mom will realize she needs to change. As we left the gala, the weight of our actions hung heavily on us. Exposing the truth brought relief, but the fallout was bittersweet. Elaine was held accountable, but at a cost. The streets were quiet as we drove home, reflecting our own conflicted emotions. Yet, I knew we had set necessary change in motion. In the months following the gala, the ripple effects of Elaine's exposure were profound. The once vibrant woman, who had always charmed her way through any misstep, now faced a reality she never anticipated. Mark's father, long blinded by his affection for her, was finally confronted with the full extent of her negligence. Disheartened and disillusioned, he made the heart-wrenching decision to separate from Elaine. This shift was more than emotional, as struck a critical blow to her lifestyle. Without his financial support, Elaine was forced to downsize drastically. Her opulent days were over, replaced by a stark and unforgiving reality. As she struggled with her new circumstances, the legal consequences of her actions began to unfold. Empowered by her unmasking at the gala, several community members came forward with grievances they had once overlooked out of respect for her supposed generosity. Lawsuits were filed, each one a reminder that her carelessness had real consequences, and she could no longer charm her way out of accountability. Back at our newly renovated home, Mark and I found solace in our fresh start. The kitchen, once a symbol of destruction, now gleamed with modern fixtures, becoming the heart of our home again. This physical rebuilding mirrored the repairs in our own lives. Our bond deepened, strengthened by the trials we had faced together. The trust and teamwork that saw us through the renovation extended into every part of our relationship. My career also took a promising turn. I was promoted at my tech company, recognized not just for my skills but for the resilience I had shown. This new role challenged and excited me, reaffirming that personal growth often follows the toughest trials. Mark and I decided it was time to expand our family, a step we had delayed during the chaos of the past year. We approached this new chapter with a sense of hope and renewal, committed to building a home defined by love, respect, and positivity, a sharp contrast to the toxic dynamics that had once shadowed our early days as a couple. As for your question, public exposure as a method for holding someone accountable can be powerful and, in some cases, necessary, especially when private efforts to address harmful behavior fail repeatedly. It can force change when all other methods are exhausted. However, it comes with risks. Public shaming can sometimes go too far, causing long-term damage beyond the immediate consequences. It can strip away the opportunity for redemption or rehabilitation, turning a person's mistake into a lifelong mark of shame. While it may feel justified in extreme cases, it's important to consider whether the goal is justice or revenge, and to ensure that the person has the opportunity to learn, grow, and change. Hey there, I'm Sapa, 32 years old and juggling a career as a marketing executive while raising two wonderful kids, Amy, who's 6, and Ethan, who's 4. My husband Mark and I have been married for 8 years, living in our cozy suburban home, complete with a white picket fence. It's a typical Tuesday morning and I'm rushing to get the kids ready for school. Mark's already left for work, so it's all on me today. Amy, sweetie, have you seen your backpack? I ask, a little frazzled. Grandma Evelyn put it by the door, Mom, she answers. I sigh. Evelyn, my mother-in-law, means well, but sometimes I feel like she's silently competing with me for the title of best mom. Just then, my phone buzzes. It's a text from my best friend, Lena. Girl, how do you do it all? You're like a supermom. I laugh quietly to myself as I reply, trust me, it's not as perfect as it seems. With that, I hustle the kids into the car and head off to school. Later at work, I'm deeply immersed in developing a new marketing campaign when my coworker, Jake, appears at my cubicle. Hey Sapa, got a minute? I could use your input on this proposal. Jake's new to the team, but he's quickly become someone I can rely on. We chat for a bit about the project, and then he asks, how's the family? I smile. Oh, chaos as usual. That evening, Evelyn drops by with some homemade lasagna. As she sets it on the counter, she casually remarks, I noticed Amy's room was a bit untidy earlier, so I tidied it up for you. I feel a wave of annoyance but manage to smile. Thanks, Evelyn. You really didn't have to. Oh, it's no trouble, she replies with a sweet tone that has an edge to it. I know how busy you are with work and everything. After she leaves, Mark comes home. He gives me a quick peck on the cheek and asks, Mom stopped by. Yeah, she brought dinner. I say, that was nice of her. Maybe we should ask her to watch the kids more often so you can get a break, he suggests. I tense up. I can handle it, Mark. We agreed on how we wanted to raise the kids, I say, feeling defensive. He raises his hands in surrender. Just a suggestion, Sapa. No need to get worked up. As I'm tucking Amy in that night, she looks up at me with big, innocent eyes and asks, Mommy, do you like your job more than us? My heart skips a beat. Of course not, sweetie. Why would you think that? She shrugs, just wondering. I kiss her goodnight, but her question lingers in my mind long after she falls asleep. My life looks perfect on the surface, but I can't shake the feeling that there are cracks forming beneath. The next morning at breakfast, I notice something off. Amy and Ethan are unusually quiet, pushing their cereal around. What's up, kiddos? You're awfully quiet this morning, I ask. Amy mumbles, nothing. Are you sure? Did you have fun with Grandma Evelyn yesterday? I press. Ethan chimes in. Grandma said you don't like spending time with us. My heart sinks. What? That's not true at all. Why would she say that? I ask, stunned. Amy looks at me with wide eyes. Then why are you always working? Later, I confront Mark. Did you hear what your mom told the kids? She's making them think I don't want to spend time with them. Mark rolls his eyes. Come on, Sapa. You're blowing this out of proportion. Mom's just trying to help, he says dismissively. Frustrated, I call Lena. Girl, that's messed up, she says, clearly shocked. Your mother-in-law is playing mind games with you. I know, I reply, feeling torn, but Mark won't listen. Lena's voice is firm. Maybe you should install some cameras and catch her in the act. I hesitate. Isn't that a bit extreme? Trust your gut, Sapa. Something isn't right here, she insists. At work, I confide in Jake during lunch. Well, that's intense, he says, wide-eyed. What are you going to do? I sigh. I honestly don't know. I feel like I'm going crazy. Jake shakes his head. You're not crazy. Your instincts are telling you something for a reason. Taking Lena's advice, I discreetly install a few nanny cams around the house. It feels a little wrong, but I need to know the truth. A few days later, I'm outside when I overhear Evelyn chatting with our neighbor Karen. Poor Mark, Evelyn says. Stuck with a wife who's more concerned with her career than her family. Karen gasps, no. Sapa seems so devoted to her kids. Evelyn sighs dramatically. Appearances can be deceiving, dear. I clench my fists, fighting the urge to confront her right then and there. That evening, as I'm sorting laundry, Mark's phone rings. Mark stepped out onto the patio, but I could still hear bits of his conversation. Yeah, Mom, I know, we'll figure it out. Sapa doesn't suspect anything. My blood ran cold. What were they hiding from me? The next day, Amy came home from school with a drawing. It was our family, but I was drawn standing far away from everyone else. What's this, sweetie? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It's us. Grandma said you might go away for work and not come back, she replied. I fought back tears. That's not true, Amy. I'm not going anywhere. She just shrugged and walked off. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. That night, after the kids were asleep, I opened the nanny cam footage. What I saw made my heart stop. There was Evelyn, sitting with my children, her voice low but sharp. Your mommy works so much because she doesn't want to be with you. But don't worry, I'll always be here. I watched, horrified, as Evelyn stroked Amy's hair and whispered, Mommy spends a lot of time with that Jake from work, doesn't she? My blood boiled. How dare she say something like that? I fast-forwarded, my fingers trembling, and caught another clip of Evelyn with Ethan. Sweetie, Mommy might go away for a long time. But don't worry, Grandma will always take care of you. I slammed the laptop shut, shaking with rage. I stormed into the bedroom, where Mark was reading. We need to talk. Now, he looked up, startled. What's wrong? I shoved the laptop at him. Watch this. Your mother is poisoning our kids against me. As he watched the footage, his face went pale, not with shock, but with guilt. You knew, I said, my voice breaking. It wasn't a question. Mark sighed, running his hand through his hair. Sapa, it's complicated. Complicated? I shouted. Your mother is telling our children that I don't love them. Look, Mom was just trying to prepare them, he said, standing up, his voice cold. Prepare them for what? For when you leave us for that coworker of yours, he replied, the words hitting like a slap. I stared at him stunned. What are you talking about? I'm not leaving anyone. Mark scoffed. Oh, come on, Sapa. I've seen how close you and Jake are. He's a friend and a colleague, nothing more. How could you even think that? He looked away, because that's what happens. People get close at work, and families fall apart. Suddenly, it clicked. Is that what happened with you and your secretary, Lisa? His silence was all the confirmation I needed. How long? I demanded. 6 months, he mumbled. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. So you and your mother cooked up this scheme to make me the villain and get custody of the kids. My voice was shaking with fury. Mark had the decency to look ashamed. Mom thought it would be easier on the kids if they believed you'd already abandoned them. Easier? I spat. You're destroying their trust in me. You're ruining their sense of security. I was shaking with anger. I can't believe you let this happen. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Mark said, reaching for me. I backed away. Don't touch me. I can't even look at you right now. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Where are you going? I yanked my arm free. To check on our kids, someone needs to make sure they know they're loved. I found Amy and Ethan playing quietly in Amy's room. Their little faces broke my heart. Hey, munchkins, can we talk? They looked at me warily. Is it true you're leaving us? Ethan asked in a small voice. I pulled them both into a tight hug. No, baby, I'm not going anywhere. I love you both more than anything in this world. But Grandma said, Amy started. Grandma was wrong, I said firmly. I will always be here for you, no matter what. As I held my children close, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. I had a fight ahead of me, for my kids, for the truth, and for justice against those who tried to tear us apart. The next morning, I called Lena and Jake to fill them in on everything. We met up at a cafe to figure out what to do next. Girl, we need to take these snakes down, Lena said, slamming her fist on the table. Jake nodded in agreement. I got a buddy who's a private investigator. He might be able to dig up some dirt on Evelyn. I smiled weakly. Thanks, guys, I don't know what I'd do without you. Over the next week, we uncovered a gold mine of information. Evelyn had a long history of meddling in Mark's relationships, driving away any girlfriends she didn't approve of. She'd even sabotaged his college romance by spreading rumors that the girl had cheated. Armed with this, I met with a lawyer, Sarah, who reviewed everything we had gathered. This is strong evidence, Sapa, Sarah said, flipping through the files. We can definitely use this in court. What should I do next? I asked. Document everything. Every conversation. Every interaction with your kids. We're building a case, she replied. I nodded, determined. I'm ready. The perfect opportunity came during a family barbecue. Everyone was there. Mark's siblings, cousins, even his father. Evelyn, as usual, was basking in the attention, doting on the kids. I took a deep breath, bracing myself, and stepped into the center of the gathering. Everyone, I have something to say, I announced, my voice steady. The chatter stopped, and all eyes turned to me. Evelyn eyed me suspiciously. For months now, Evelyn has been poisoning my children against me. I said, my voice ringing with clarity. She's been telling them that I don't love them, that I might abandon them. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Evelyn shot up from her seat, her face flushed with anger. How dare you? I've done nothing but help this family. I pulled out my phone and, with a calmness I didn't feel, played the nanny cam footage. Her own voice, clear as day, filled the air, telling my children lies, manipulating their innocent hearts. The color drained from Evelyn's face. Mark leaped to his feet. Sapa, stop this. You're embarrassing everyone. I turned to him, my eyes blazing with fury. Oh, I'm embarrassing you? How about we tell everyone about your affair with Lisa? The crowd erupted in shock. Mark's father looked like he might collapse from the revelation. You've been cheating on Sapa, he bellowed. Mark stammered, trying to explain, but I wasn't done. And Evelyn knew. She helped him plan to take the kids away from me. They were going to make me look like the bad one. Evelyn tried to regain control, her voice shaking. Now everyone, let's calm down. I'm sure we can work this out as a family. Mark's sister stood up, her voice cutting through the chaos. Work what out? The fact that you've been manipulating everyone for years? I always knew something wasn't right with you. The gathering exploded into chaos. Mark and Evelyn tried to defend themselves, but the evidence was undeniable. One by one, family members came to me, offering support and apologizing for ever doubting me. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. I filed for divorce and fought for full custody. The nanny cam footage was damning in court. Mark lost his job when his company found out about the affair with Lisa. Evelyn's reputation in the community was shattered. A year later, I sat in my new apartment watching Amy and Ethan play. We had been through therapy together, rebuilding trust and understanding after everything that had happened. My phone buzzed. It was Mark, begging once again to see the kids. No, Mark, I said, my voice steady. The court order is clear, supervised visits only. I hung up the phone just as Lena and Jake arrived for our weekly dinner. How are you holding up, champ? Jake asked, giving me a warm hug. I smiled, truly happy for the first time in ages. We're doing great. The kids are adjusting well, and I just got promoted at work. Lena raised her glass. To new beginnings and kicking toxic people to the curb. We clinked glasses, laughing. As I looked around at my true family, my children and my loyal friends, I knew that we were going to be okay. We were stronger now, wiser, and free from the manipulation that had almost torn us apart. The road ahead was bright, and we were ready to face it together. The story of Sapa's journey through betrayal and triumph has come to an end. Now, here's a question for you. If you were in Sapa's shoes, could you ever forgive Mark and Evelyn for their manipulation? Or do you believe some actions are truly unforgivable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective could help someone going through a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more compelling real-life dramas. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light. Thanks for watching, and remember, you're stronger than you know. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm 28 years old, working as a marketing executive, and I was beyond excited to start a family with my husband, Mike. We had been dreaming of this moment for ages, but little did I know that Mike's mother, Linda, had her own plans for our growing family. It all began when Mike and I announced our pregnancy. We were thrilled, but Linda's reaction was off. She forced a smile and said, "Oh, how wonderful. Just make sure it doesn't interfere with my birthday plans." I laughed it off at first, thinking it was a joke, but as time passed, her behavior became more intrusive. She insisted on organizing my baby shower, and when I tried to contribute, she brushed me off. "Honey, I've done this before. You just focus on growing that baby," she'd say, patting my belly like I was merely an incubator. Things escalated when we started decorating the nursery. Mike and I had chosen a sweet woodland theme, but Linda barged in, shaking her head. No. Babies need pastels, not these ridiculous colors," she declared, holding up a fistful of pink paint swatches. I tried to be polite. "Linda, we really appreciate your input, but this is our decision." She narrowed her eyes. "I'm just trying to help. Don't be so sensitive." Mike, bless him, stepped in, trying to mediate. "Mom, Sarah, and I have already chosen the theme. Maybe you can help with picking out clothes instead." But Linda couldn't let it go. She started showing up unannounced, sneaking in decor items when we weren't looking, trying to change the nursery behind our backs. It was exhausting. As my due date approached, her fixation with her birthday became unnerving. She constantly hinted how special it would be if the baby arrived on her big day. I started to feel like my body was a ticking time bomb. One evening, a week before my due date, Linda cornered me in the kitchen during a family dinner. Her voice was low, her breath hot on my ear. "You know, Sarah," she whispered, "it would be such a blessing if you could hold off on delivering until my birthday. We could share the special day." I was stunned. "Linda, that's not really something I can control." Her hand gripped my arm, nails digging into my skin. "Oh, you'd be surprised what a determined mother can do," she said, her eyes gleaming in a way that sent a chill down my spine. I found Mike, and we left immediately. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "Mike, I'm worried about your mom. She's becoming obsessed with this birthday thing." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know she can be overbearing, but she means well. She's just excited about the baby." But I wasn't convinced. That night, as I lay in bed, rubbing my belly, I couldn't stop wondering what Linda might do to get her way. And soon, I was about to find out just how far she'd go. 2 days before Linda's birthday, the contractions started, sharp and intense. Mike rushed me to the hospital, my hand gripping his through each wave of pain. Of course, Linda insisted on coming along, hovering like a vulture. "Just hold on, sweetie," she urged, checking her watch constantly. "Maybe we can time this just right." I wanted to scream at her, but another contraction knocked the wind out of me. The next hours blurred into one long haze of pain and exhaustion, with Linda's mutterings about the time ringing in my ears. "It's getting close to midnight. Just a little longer, dear." The doctors urged me to push, but I was beyond tired. Mike was by my side, encouraging me, but Linda kept butting in. "Come on, Sarah, just hold on a bit longer. You can do this." Finally, with one last agonizing push, our baby girl was born. The clock had just struck 12:01 a.m., Linda's birthday. "Oh, how perfect," Linda squealed, clapping her hands in delight. "We're birthday twins." I barely registered her words as they laid my daughter on my chest. She was beautiful, perfect, and the overwhelming love I felt brought tears to my eyes. But Linda's excitement quickly soured. As the nurses fussed over the baby and Mike beamed with joy, I saw Linda's expression shift. Her smile froze, then twisted into a scowl. "Well, I suppose that's nice," she muttered, but no one paid attention to her anymore. Hours passed in a daze. Exhausted, I drifted off while the nurses took my baby for some routine tests. I'm not sure how long I slept, but something stirred me awake. My eyes fluttered open, and what I saw sent a shock of terror through me. Linda was standing over my baby's crib, a pillow clutched in her hands. She glanced around and slowly lowered the pillow toward my daughter's face. "No," I screamed, my voice raw and hoarse. "What are you doing?" Linda jerked back, hiding the pillow behind her. "Oh, Sarah, you startled me," she said, feigning innocence. "I was just checking on the baby." But I had seen it. I knew exactly what Linda had tried to do. Panicking, I jabbed at the call button, shouting for help. Nurses rushed in, followed closely by Mike. I was a mess, trying to explain what I'd just witnessed through gasping sobs. She tried to smother her. "She had a pillow," I cried, pointing at Linda. Linda's face remained calm, her expression a mask of pure innocence. "I don't know what she's talking about," she said smoothly. "I think the poor dear is just overwrought from the delivery." Mike looked bewildered, his eyes darting between us. "Sarah, honey, are you sure? Maybe it was just a nightmare?" His voice was gentle but filled with uncertainty. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mike, I know what I saw. Your mother tried to kill our baby." The room exploded into chaos. Security was called, questions were being thrown at me, and through it all, Linda kept up her innocent act. "This is ridiculous," she huffed, crossing her arms. "I would never harm my own grandchild. Sarah's just not in her right mind." I saw the doubt in Mike's eyes, and it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. How could he not believe me? How could he think I'd make this up? As they wheeled our baby away for safety, I knew one thing. I would never let Linda near my child again, no matter what it took. Despite the confusion, I refused to back down. "Please check the cameras," I begged the hospital security. "You'll see, I know what I saw." After what felt like hours, the security officer returned, his face grim. "Ma'am," he said, "we've reviewed the footage. You were right. We've contacted the local police." Mike looked devastated as he watched the footage. His hands trembled, his voice barely a whisper. "I can't believe it. My own mother." Linda was immediately banned from the hospital, but that didn't stop her from trying to manipulate the situation. She started calling Mike constantly, spinning tales about how it had all been a misunderstanding. "I was just fluffing the pillow, sweetie," her voicemails cooed. "Sarah's suffering from postpartum depression. She needs help." Meanwhile, I was struggling with my recovery. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda standing over my baby with that pillow. The stress was crushing me. I couldn't bear to let my daughter out of my sight. Mike's father, George, tried to smooth things over. He showed up at the hospital with a nervous smile. "Now, let's not blow this out of proportion. Linda's always been a bit enthusiastic. I'm sure she didn't mean any harm." I was floored. "She tried to smother my baby, George. How is that not harmful?" The tension between us and Mike's family was unbearable. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. That's when I called my best friend, Emma, who's a lawyer. I needed advice. "Sarah, this is serious," Emma said after I told her everything. "You need to protect yourself and the baby. I think we should look into getting a restraining order." Days passed, and more disturbing details came to light. The police investigation revealed Linda's long history of controlling behavior. They interviewed some of Mike's ex-girlfriends, who all shared stories of her manipulation and jealousy. Then one afternoon, Mike made a chilling discovery while packing things up at their old house. Linda's diary. He brought it to me, his hands shaking. "Sarah," he said, his voice low, "you need to see this." I opened the diary, my heart racing, and as I read through the pages, my blood ran cold. Linda had written obsessively about her birthday, how it was her special day, and how she wouldn't let anyone, not even her own grandchild, overshadow it. Mike was silent for a long time after reading it. Finally, he stood up. "I need to talk to her. This ends now." I wanted to stop him, terrified of what Linda might do next, but I knew he needed this confrontation. Hours later, Mike returned home, looking drained but resolute. "What happened?" I asked, dreading the answer. Mike sighed, rubbing his face. It was intense. At first, she denied everything, but eventually, she broke down. Dad was there too. He finally saw her for who she really is. "And?" I held my breath. "And it's over," Mike said firmly. I told her she's not welcome in our lives anymore unless she gets serious help. Even then, I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust her again. A weight lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't the end, not by a long shot, but it was a start. As I held our daughter close, I knew we had a long road ahead of us. But for the first time since that horrible night, I felt a glimmer of hope. After everything, Mike and I knew we had to take action. We couldn't let Linda get away with what she had done. With heavy hearts, we made the decision to press charges. "We're doing the right thing," Mike reassured me, squeezing my hand as we met with the prosecutor. But Linda wasn't giving up without a fight. She sent tearful voicemails, pleading letters, and even tried to corner Mike at work. But we stood firm. "I'm sorry, Mom, but you've gone too far this time," Mike told her, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. The court case was grueling. Sitting there, hearing the details of that night, I felt sick to my stomach, but nothing could have prepared me for the shock of Linda's diagnosis: narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. The defendant exhibits classic signs of NPD, the psychiatrist testified. Her obsession with her birthday and her willingness to harm others for attention are textbook examples. Then came a surprise witness, Mike's ex-girlfriend, Rachel. "Linda always had to be the center of attention," Rachel said, her voice trembling. "She sabotaged our dates, spread rumors about me. Once, she even faked a health scare to stop Mike from proposing." Mike's face went pale as the realization dawned. This wasn't new behavior. Linda had been manipulating people for years. When the verdict was read, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Linda was found guilty of attempted infanticide. The judge sentenced her to both psychiatric treatment and prison time. "The court cannot ignore the severity of this crime," the judge declared. "Mrs. Thompson, your actions could have resulted in the death of an innocent child." As Linda was led away, George stood up in the gallery. His face was set with determination. "Linda," he called out, "I want a divorce." The courtroom fell silent. Linda's face crumpled, but for once, no one rushed to comfort her. In the weeks that followed, Mike threw himself into healing our family. He cut all ties with Linda, changed our phone numbers, and even suggested we move. "I think we need a fresh start," he said one night somewhere far from here. I agreed. We packed up our lives and moved to a new city, ready to begin again. A year passed in a blur of healing and new experiences. I returned to work and found my stride at a new marketing firm. While Mike's relationship with his father grew stronger, now free from Linda's influence. On our daughter's first birthday, we held a small party surrounded by the people who truly cared about us: George, Emma, and a few close friends. To new beginnings, Mike toasted, raising his glass as we sang happy birthday to our daughter. I looked around at the smiling faces and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. We had been through hell, but we'd come out stronger. Later that night, after the guests had left and our daughter was asleep, Mike showed me a news article on his phone. "Linda lost her job," he said quietly. "Her reputation in town is ruined. She's isolated in prison and no one visits her." I felt a pang of something, not quite pity, but a hollow sadness for what could have been. "Do you ever regret how things turned out?" I asked him. Mike was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "No, she made her choices. We made ours. And look at what we have now." He gestured around our home, at the birthday decorations, the laughter that had filled the air just hours before, and the photo of our smiling daughter on the mantel. "This is what matters," he said firmly. "This is our family." I nodded and leaned into his embrace, feeling the weight of the past lift just a little. We had weathered the storm, faced the darkness, and come out stronger on the other side. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt truly safe for the first time in years. We were home, we were healing, and we were free. I'm Margaret Evans Smith, and at 68, I thought I had everything figured out. After a long and successful career as a corporate lawyer in Chicago, I was settling into my golden years. My late husband had left me financially secure, and I was surrounded by family, or so I believed. My son Tom is 45 and lives in New York, trying to make it as an artist. He's always been fiercely independent, but despite his best efforts, he's still struggling. I worry about him, but I know he prefers to handle things on his own. Then there's Jake, my nephew, Tom's boy, just 7 years old, with a charm that could sell ice to an Eskimo. But wherever Jake goes, trouble isn't far behind. Aunt Margaret, you're looking as radiant as ever. Jake said with a cheeky grin as he waltzed into my living room one afternoon. I smiled politely, though my stomach clenched. "Thank you, Jake. What brings you by today?" I asked, already sensing what was coming. He ran a hand through his hair, sheepish. "Well, I hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a bind again." I sighed. It wasn't the first time, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. But family is family, right? On the other end of the spectrum is my niece, Linda. Now there's a woman who knows the value of hard work. Single mother of 2, always on her feet. "Margaret, I can't thank you enough for helping with the kids' school fees," Linda said one day over coffee. I waved her off. "Nonsense, Linda. Education is important. I'm happy to help." Then there's Robert, my brother-in-law. Ex-cop, tough as nails but with a heart of gold. He's been my rock since my husband passed. "Maggie," he growled over the phone, "you've got to stop letting that Jake kid take advantage of you." I knew he was right, but family isn't that simple. It never is. After yet another one of Jake's emergencies, I decided to update my will. I called my lawyer, an old colleague from my firm days. "Margaret, are you sure about this distribution?" he asked, eyebrows raised. I nodded. "Yes. The bulk goes to Linda and her kids. Tom and Jake will get smaller portions." As I hung up, I had the strange feeling that this decision would set off a chain of events. I just didn't know how soon. That night, I sat in my study, looking through old family photos. Tom as a kid, Jake as a baby, Linda at her high school graduation. Where did the time go? And how did things get so complicated? The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. When I opened the door, it was Linda, looking frazzled. "Aunt Margaret, I'm sorry to come by so late, but I think you should know, Jake's been asking around about your will. He seems upset." A chill ran down my spine. I had a feeling this was only the beginning of the trouble ahead. But I'm Margaret Evans Smith. I've faced down tougher opponents in courtrooms. Whatever storm was brewing, I'd be ready for it. Little did I know that storm was about to break. The annual Evans family reunion was in full swing, and on the surface, it seemed like any other year. But beneath the laughter and chatter, tension simmered. I stood by the punch bowl, watching Jake work the room with his usual charm. There was something different about him this time, though, a sharpness to his smile that hadn't been there before. "Hey, Aunt Margaret," he said, sidling up to me. "Beautiful day for a family reunion, isn't it?" I nodded cautiously. "Indeed, Jake. Are you enjoying yourself?" "Oh, absolutely. Always nice to catch up with everyone," he said, his voice casual. Then his tone shifted. "Speaking of catching up, I've heard you've been making some changes lately." My heart skipped a beat. How did he know about the will? I kept my expression neutral. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, Jake." He leaned in closer, his voice low. "Come on, Aunt Margaret. We both know what I'm talking about, the will. Cutting me out after everything we've been through as a family?" I stood my ground. "Jake, my financial decisions are my own business. Now, if you'll excuse me." Before I could walk away, he grabbed my arm, his grip tighter than I expected. "We're not done talking about this." The reunion ended, but the tension lingered. Days passed, and though I tried to go about my normal routine, I couldn't shake the heaviness in the air. Then, one evening, everything came to a head. I was in my study when I heard the front door slam, the sound reverberating through the house. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. "Aunt Margaret," Jake's voice boomed. "We need to talk." I stepped out into the hall, and my breath caught. There was Jake, eyes wild, gripping a baseball bat tightly in his hand. "Jake, what are you doing?" My voice trembled as he advanced, swinging the bat slowly, menacingly. "You're going to change that old back, Aunt Margaret," he growled. "Right now." "Jake, please," I pleaded, trying to stay calm. "Let's talk about this rationally." "Rational?" He spat, his face twisted in anger. Was it rational to cut me out? To leave everything to Linda and her brats? I instinctively backed away, heart racing, my hands shaking. "Jake, you're scaring me." "Put the bat down. Please." "Not until you agree to make this right." His voice cracked with fury. "I want it all, Aunt Margaret. Every last penny." In that moment, looking into his crazed eyes, I realized I wasn't staring at the little boy I'd once bounced on my knee or the young man I tried so hard to guide. This was someone else entirely, a stranger. "Okay, Jake," I whispered, barely able to get the words out. "Okay, I'll do it. Just Just put the bat down." He lowered the bat, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "I knew you'd see reason, Aunt Margaret. We'll go to the lawyer's first thing tomorrow." After he left, I collapsed onto the floor, trembling. How had it come to this? How had things gone so terribly wrong? The next day, I called a security company and had hidden cameras installed throughout my home. It felt surreal, like I was living in a suspense thriller. But the fear was real. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jake might return. And return he did, almost daily. He'd show up unannounced, his eyes darting suspiciously around the house. "Just checking in on my favorite aunt," he'd say, but the warmth in his voice was long gone. I'd force a smile, my heart pounding. "That's thoughtful of you, Jake." One afternoon, while Jake was supposedly using the bathroom, I noticed my checkbook had been moved. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. After you left, I carefully went through my financial records. "Oh my God," I whispered, my hands shaking. Several checks had been forged, all in Jake's handwriting. I called Linda immediately. "I need your help," I said, my voice cracking. Over the next few weeks, we documented everything, every forged check, every suspicious interaction. But then Robert uncovered something even worse. "Jake's mixed up in some bad stuff, Maggie," Robert said, his voice heavy with concern. "There's a local drug ring, and his name keeps coming up." The ground felt like it was crumbling beneath me. As we built our case, Jake's behavior became more erratic. He'd show up at all hours, pacing, muttering under his breath, his eyes wild with paranoia. And then came the night it all fell apart. I was in my study when Jake burst in, more agitated than I'd ever seen him. "I know what you're doing," he snarled, advancing on me. "You think you're so smart, Aunt Margaret, but I'm not going to let you screw me over." "Jake, please," I said, backing away, my heart thundering in my chest. "Calm down. Let's talk this through." "Talk?" He laughed bitterly, his voice cold. "We're way past talking. I want what's mine, and I want it now." He lunged at me, grabbing my arm roughly. I cried out in pain and fear. "You're hurting me, Jake. Please, stop." "Not until you give me what I want," he shouted, shaking me violently. Suddenly, the door burst open. Robert and Linda rushed in, followed by 2 police officers. "Get your hands off her," Robert bellowed. Jake spun around, shock and rage flashing across his face. "What the hell is this?" The officers moved in quickly, restraining him as he struggled and cursed, his face twisted with fury. I sank against Linda, overwhelmed with relief and an unbearable sadness. "I'm so sorry, Aunt Margaret," Linda whispered, holding me tight. "But it's over now. You're safe." I watched as they led Jake away in handcuffs, still ranting, his voice echoing through the house. My nephew, my own flesh and blood. How had it come to this? As the chaos subsided, I turned to Robert and Linda, my voice shaky and broken. Determined, I took a deep breath and looked at both Robert and Linda. "Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you, but now we have to see this through to the end." The days following Jake's arrest were a whirlwind. Linda, Robert, and I spent hours with the police, presenting the evidence we had meticulously gathered. The detectives' eyes widened as they sifted through the financial records and reviewed the footage from my hidden cameras. "Mrs. Smith, this is quite extensive," one detective remarked, impressed. "You've built a solid case here." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of pride and sadness. I just wish it hadn't come to this. As news of Jake's arrest spread, Tom flew in from New York. He stormed into my house, his face a swirl of confusion and anger. "Mom, what's going on? Why is Jake in jail? This has to be some kind of mistake." I took a deep breath, motioning for him to sit. "Tom, there's a lot you need to know." Over the next few hours, I laid everything out, the threats, the theft, and Jake's connections to the drug ring. With each revelation, Tom's expression darkened. "I can't believe it," he whispered, his voice cracking. "My own son." The court case was grueling. I sat there day after day, watching as Jake's web of lies unraveled. My years of legal experience proved invaluable, and I worked closely with the prosecution, my voice steady as I testified against my own nephew. When the judge finally announced the verdict, guilty on all counts, I felt no triumph, only a deep, aching sorrow. As Jake was led away, his eyes burned with fury. "This isn't over, Aunt Margaret," he snarled. I met his gaze, my voice quiet but resolute. Yes, Jake, it is. In the aftermath of the trial, I revised my will one last time, removing Jake completely. It was a painful decision, but a necessary one. 1 year later, I found myself in the backyard, surrounded by family. Tom was playing with Linda's kids, while Robert manned the grill. The wounds from the past year were still there, but they were healing. Any word on Jake? Tom asked quietly as we set the table. I sighed. More charges. His drug connections ran deeper than we thought. He'll be in prison for a long time. As we sat down to eat, I cleared my throat, gathering the strength to share something important. I have an announcement to make, I said, glancing around the table. I've decided to start a foundation. A foundation? Robert raised an eyebrow. I nodded. To help victims of financial elder abuse. What happened to me? I don't want others to go through that alone. Tom's eyes welled up with emotion. Mom, that's amazing. As conversation flowed around me, I reflected on the past year, the betrayal, the fear, the hard decisions, but also the love, the support, and the strength I have found, both in myself and in those around me. To family, I said, raising my glass, the one we choose and the bonds we forge through adversity. Everyone echoed the toast, and for the first time in a long while, I felt peace wash over me. The road had been difficult, but I had walked it with dignity. And now, I was ready for whatever came next. If you were in Margaret's shoes, would you have involved the police earlier, or would you have tried to handle the situation within the family? How far would you go to protect a family member who's clearly gone down a destructive path? Hey, I'm Rolla, 33 years old, working as a marketing executive, and I've got quite the story to share about how my seemingly perfect life spiraled into chaos. 3 years ago, I thought I hit the jackpot. I met Tom at a work conference, tall, charming, with a smile that could light up a room. We clicked instantly, spending hours talking about anything and everything. But on our third date, he dropped a bombshell. He was a widower with a teenage daughter. I hope this doesn't change anything, he said nervously. I remember laughing it off. Are you kidding? I love kids. Little did I know what I was in for. At first, Lily, his daughter, seemed like the sweetest kid. Polite, all smiles. It's so nice to meet you, Rolla, she chirped the first time we met. Dad's told me so much about you. I did everything I could to bond with her. Shopping trips, movie marathons, even tried learning her favorite video game. But something always felt off, like she was wearing a mask. Sometimes the real Lily would slip through, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Tom, bless him, never noticed. He'd beam at us, saying, my two favorite girls getting along so well. Things really took a turn when I found out I was pregnant. Tom was ecstatic, spinning me around the kitchen, tears of joy in his eyes. We're having a baby, he shouted. But Lily's reaction was different. That's great, she said, but her voice was flat, and her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I tried to include her in the excitement. You're going to be a big sister, Lily. Isn't that amazing? She nodded, but I caught a fleeting look. Was it resentment? Anger? It vanished so quickly I wondered if I'd imagined it. As the months went by, odd things started happening. Important messages between me and Tom would disappear. Plans we made would get mixed up, and Lily always had a convenient explanation. Oh, Dad must have forgotten to tell you, she'd say innocently. He's been so busy. Her best friend, Zoe, was the only one who seemed to notice something wasn't right. She'd come over sometimes, and I'd catch her giving Lily these knowing glances. One day, Zoe pulled me aside. Rolla, you're really cool, you know? Lily's lucky to have you as a stepmom. It was a small comment, but it meant the world to me. At least someone appreciated my efforts. As my due date got closer, the tension in the house became unbearable. Tom was constantly torn between me and Lily, and I could feel myself being pushed to the sidelines. One night, I finally said, Tom, we need to talk about Lily. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Rolla, please. She's just adjusting. It's a big change for her. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. The sweet girl I first met was gone, replaced by someone who watched me with cold, calculating eyes. By this point, I was juggling work, preparing for maternity leave, and dealing with the increasing strain at home. One morning, I woke up to find Lily in the kitchen making breakfast. Morning, Rolla. I made your favorite, blueberry pancakes. I smiled, touched by the gesture. Thanks, Lily, that's so sweet of you. But as I sat down, I noticed Tom frowning at his phone. Rolla, did you forget to send me the doctor's appointment details? I blinked, confused. No, I texted you yesterday. Lily quickly chimed in. Dad, remember? Your phone was acting up yesterday. Maybe the message didn't come through. This became a pattern. Important messages vanishing, plans falling apart, and Lily always had a perfectly timed explanation. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong at work. In the break room one day, I overheard hushed whispers. Did you hear about Tom's new wife? Apparently she's just after his money. My heart sank. Later, I confronted my coworker Lisa. Where did you hear that? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her coffee cup. I think Lily mentioned something at her school bake sale, but I'm sure it's just teenage gossip. My stomach turned. Lily was spreading rumors about me. I needed to talk to someone who would understand. I called my sister, Elena. I don't know what to do, I said, my voice breaking. It's like Lily's trying to push me out of the family. Elena's voice was sympathetic but firm. Rolla, you need to talk to Tom. This isn't right. But every time I tried to bring it up with Tom, he brushed it off. Honey, you're hormonal. Lily's just a kid. She doesn't mean any harm. I felt like I was losing my mind. Was I imagining all of this? Things came to a head at my baby shower. Sarah, my best friend, had organized everything beautifully, but as the guests arrived, I noticed Lily whispering to Tom's family members, who began giving me odd looks. Later, I overheard Lily talking to Tom's mother. I'm just worried about the baby, Lily said, her voice sweet but laced with something darker. Rolla's been so unstable lately, forgetting things, getting upset over nothing. I just hope she'll be okay as a mom. Fury surged through me. I stormed over, ready to confront her. But in my anger, I knocked over a tray of cupcakes. Everyone turned to stare. Oh, Rolla, Lily exclaimed, her voice carrying through the room, full of mock concern. Are you okay? Here, let me help you. We don't want you getting too worked up in your condition. Humiliated, I froze. Tom rushed over, concern written all over his face. Rolla, maybe you should lie down, he said gently. You're looking a bit flushed. That night, I broke down in front of Sarah. I feel like I'm going crazy. No one believes me about Lily, I sobbed. Sarah hugged me tightly. I believe you. We'll figure this out, I promise. But before we could even begin, it happened. A sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I gasped, clutching my belly. Sarah, I think I'm in labor. Panic set in. It was too early. This couldn't be happening now. Stay calm, Sarah said, already dialing 911. We're getting you to the hospital. As the contractions intensified, I tried to reach Tom. No answer. I left a voicemail, my voice strained with pain. Tom, the baby's coming. Please, I need you. In the chaos, I caught sight of Lily standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. As Sarah helped me to the car, I could have sworn I saw Lily pick up my phone, a small smile playing on her lips. My last thought before another wave of pain hit me was chilling. What if Tom never gets my message? What if, at the most important moment of our lives, Lily finally succeeds in keeping us apart? The drive to the hospital was a blur of agony and fear. Between contractions, I kept trying to call Tom. Come on, pick up, I muttered, dialing over and over. Sarah glanced at me, worry etched on her face. Still nothing. I shook my head, fighting back tears. The next few hours were the hardest of my life. The physical pain was excruciating, but the emotional agony of Tom's absence hurt even more. Sarah stayed by my side, whispering words of encouragement, but I'd never felt so alone. Finally, with one last push, my son entered the world. His cry filled the room, and for a brief moment, all the hurt and betrayal faded away. He's beautiful, Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes. I held him close, overwhelmed with love, but as the adrenaline wore off, the pain of Tom's absence hit me again. Where was he? Hours later, Tom burst into the room, his face pale and frantic. Rolla, I'm so sorry. I just got your messages. Lily said you were fine, that it was false labor. I stared at him, too exhausted and heartbroken to respond. He'd missed the birth of our son because he believed Lily over me, again. Lily trailed in behind him, her face a picture of wide-eyed innocence. Oh my gosh, the baby's here. I had no idea it was real. I feel terrible, she said, her voice dripping with fake regret. I watched her carefully, catching the glint of triumph in her eyes. She'd won. She'd stolen this moment from us. The next few days passed in a haze of hospital visits and awkward silences. Tom was full of apologies, but I could barely look at him. Lily played the role of doting sister, fussing over the baby while I withdrew into myself. One night, after Tom had fallen asleep in the hospital chair and Lily had gone home, I confided in Sarah and Elena. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I can't raise my son in this toxic environment." Elena squeezed my hand. "What do you want to do?" I took a deep breath. "I want to leave. Start over somewhere new." They exchanged glances, then nodded. "We'll help you," Sarah said firmly. Over the next week, as I recovered at home, we secretly made plans. Elena found me an apartment in another city, and Sarah helped me secure a job transfer. We quietly packed essentials and moved money, arranging everything while Tom was at work and Lily was at school. The night we chose to leave, I stood in the nursery, my son asleep peacefully in my arms. Tears streamed down my face as I looked around the room we'd so lovingly prepared. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered, "but I had to protect both of us." I placed a letter on the kitchen table, short and simple, explaining that I couldn't live like this anymore. I told Tom he had to make a choice, his daughter or his son, and that I'd be in touch when I was ready. As Sarah's car pulled up outside, I took one last look at the house. Despite everything, a part of me still loved Tom. But sometimes, love just isn't enough. With my son in my arms and my heart in pieces, I walked out the door, ready to start a new chapter. One where we wouldn't be manipulated, gaslit, or pushed aside. One where we could finally be happy. As we drove away, I whispered to my sleeping son, "It's just you and me now, little one. But we're going to be okay, I promise." The next morning, I woke up to my son's cries, the unfamiliar surroundings of our new apartment momentarily disorienting me. As I fed him, my phone buzzed nonstop. Tom had discovered we were gone. His voicemails ranged from confused to desperate. "Rolla, where are you? What's going on? Please call me back." I ignored them all, focusing on settling into our new life. But I couldn't help wondering about the chaos I'd left behind. Back at our old house, Tom was falling apart. Lily, thinking she had won, couldn't hide her smug smile. "Dad, maybe it's for the best," she said. She was always causing problems. But her victory was short-lived. Zoe, unable to bear the guilt any longer, showed up at their door. "Mr. Walker, there's something you need to know," she said, her voice shaking. For the next hour, Zoe spilled everything. The deleted messages, the rumors, Lily's deliberate attempts to sabotage our relationship. She even had screenshots of Lily bragging about her schemes. Tom listened, his face growing paler with each revelation. When Zoe finished, he turned to Lily, his voice barely a whisper. "Is this true?" Lily's facade crumbled. Tears streamed down her face as she shouted, "You were supposed to choose me and Mom, not some replacement." The argument that followed was explosive. Years of pent-up resentment and manipulation came pouring out. In the end, Lily broke down completely, admitting to everything. Tom was devastated. He realized he had lost his wife and newborn son because he had been blind to his daughter's actions. Desperate, he tried everything to find us. Private investigators, social media posts, even contacting our old friends. But I had covered my tracks well. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding my life. My new job was challenging but rewarding. I made new friends and joined a single mom support group. Slowly, I began to heal. About 6 months after I left, a letter arrived. My hands shook as I recognized Tom's handwriting. He poured his heart out, explaining everything Zoe had revealed and how he had confronted Lily. He wrote about enrolling her in intensive therapy and how they were now in family counseling together. "I failed you, Rolla," he wrote. "I failed our son. I was blind and stubborn, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But please, if you can, give me a chance to make amends. To be a father to our boy. I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. I miss you both so much." I sat there, tears falling onto the paper, conflicted. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to give our family another chance. But another part, the stronger part, remembered the pain, the gaslighting, the betrayal. I looked at my son, peacefully playing in his playpen, and made my decision. I wouldn't respond. Not yet. Maybe someday when the wounds had healed more, when I felt truly ready. But for now, we were doing fine on our own. I folded the letter and put it away. Then I picked up my son, kissing his chubby cheeks. What do you say we go to the park, little man? The story has ended, but what will you do if you were Rolla? Should she give Tom another chance or continue her new life without him? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories that spark important conversations.